The story begins at Tsurumi's diner. The main character is introduced by Tsurumi Asuta, a 17-year-old boy who studies in the 11th grade. He says that he helped his father here, but until the moment when they did not come. High-rise buildings began to be built next to this diner, which the institution began to interfere with. After that, nasty things and a lot of slander began to be said about Tsurumi's in the news. The hero's father was not particularly worried about this, and he was not going to give up his cafe. But at one point, the circumstances changed dramatically. The hero finds out that his father was hit by a pickup truck at a speed of 80 kilometers per hour and goes to the hospital. There he sees the condition of his father and is surprised that he's still alive. Asuta runs up to his father and concludes that the pickup truck wanted to hit him on purpose, but he replies that a dump truck would not have helped the intruders. Suddenly, a doctor comes into the office, and a man asks when he will be able to be discharged. But he replies that in his condition it can happen in a few months. Then he gets upset because he does not want to leave the cafe to his son. In addition, the man calls him a blockhead, which makes him a little offended. But Asuta notices that he will wield a knife in the kitchen in a wheelchair, knowing his father, and he agrees with him, saying that everyone is waiting for his cooking. Suddenly, Asuta's phone sounds, which he forgot to turn off, and as soon as he picks up the phone, Reina tells him that their cafe is on fire. The hero immediately tells this to his father, and he is shocked. The man reminds Asuta about the knife and informs her that it should not be allowed to burn. Then Asuta gets on his bike and starts racing to the cafe. Along the way, he tells me that we are talking about the Santoku knife, which his father values more than his life. He said that he would not give this treasure to the former owner of the famous Sasaki Cafe. Therefore, they simply cannot lose this precious knife. The hero arrives at a place where people have gathered around a burning building. Asuta looks around and realizes with horror that everything will burn down in this fire. Suddenly, someone grabs him from behind and forces him to turn around. The hero recognizes the girl as Reina, who called and grabs her by the shoulders to calm her down. However, then he decides to throw himself into the fire while she starts screaming that it's not worth it. After that, Asuta loses consciousness and wakes up lying on the ground. He starts to look around and notices Santoku's knife in his hand. Suddenly, the hero begins to remember what happened the moment before his death and is horrified. But then he concludes that he has entered the afterlife. Nervously swallowing saliva, the hero takes the knife in both hands and remembers Reina and his father. But suddenly, he is distracted by strange sounds from the forest. The hero turns in fear and begins to move backwards. He used to assume that this was heaven or hell, but now he doesn't understand at all where he got to. Asuta thinks it might be a wild animal, and he begins to want to run. Suddenly, something that looks like a boar comes out of the bushes. The hero is greatly surprised and assumes that it is a boar, when suddenly the beast begins to dig with its hind leg, preparing for an attack. Then he makes a dash towards Asuta and he starts running screaming. But very soon, he stumbles and, rolling head over heels, falls into the pit. Already there, he begins to experience pain and wonders. What is going on here? Then Asuta looks around and realizes that he has fallen into a trap pit, which turned out to be too deep. Then he starts screaming and calling for help with all his might. But even after that, the silence remains unchanged. This makes the hero furious and starts shouting already that he is tired of everything and insults the one who made this trap. Suddenly, a woman's voice answers him, saying that he is very noisy. Asuta is a little scared at first, but then he begins to think that he is lucky and is happy about it. He says that he fell into this pit, assuming that it was an evil joke, when suddenly the girl says that she dug it herself, causing him surprise. Then she explains that it is a trap for catching jibe, and asks if the hero can imagine how much effort she spent to make it. From this, Asuta concludes that he is to blame and decides to apologize. The hero informs that he is very sorry that he ruined her hard work, after which he asks the girl to help him get out. However, she notices that the hole is not so deep, thinking that he will be able to climb himself, and leaves. Asuta realizes that things are bad and asks the girl to stop. He reports that he turned his leg and can't get out on his own, but she replies that she doesn't care. Then the hero begins to beg for help and asks why the girl is so heartless. Suddenly she starts making him noisy again and still decides to lower the rope for him. Asuta immediately uses this opportunity, thinking that he knew from the very beginning that he would be saved. As he gets out, he notices that this place is very realistic for hell, because he does not feel that he is dead. Finally, he finds himself free and sits down on the ground, thanking the girl for her help. But when Asuta opens his eyes, he sees that she is pointing a sword at him with a serious look. She asks about who he is. The girl asks who the hero is, and he notices that this is a very unkind greeting. He reminds me that he has already apologized for Yama, but she says that he talks a lot and demands an answer from him. The hero begins to hesitate and decides to ask the girl to tell him what kind of place it is, since it does not really look like heaven or hell. Then she tells me that they are in the forest at the foot of Mount Manga. Then the girl adds that this is the western kingdom of Selva, the domain of Marquis Genos, after which she asks where the hero came from. He replies that he was born in Japan in Chiba Prefecture and asks if the girl knows about such a country. But according to her answer, she understands that she has nowhere to know, since they are definitely not in Japan right now. Then Asuta notices for himself that a very unusual fragrance emanates from this girl. It is sweet as an overripe fruit, inconspicuous as a flower bud, calm as greenery, exuberant as spices, the smell of meat and fat. Suddenly, the hero notices that he is hungry, and a loud rumbling comes from his stomach. The girl immediately starts to get angry and asks what he is up to. The hero does not understand anything, and asks her again, after which his stomach begins to rumble again. The girl decides that he is laughing at her and concludes that she is considered stupid. But Asuta explains that he is not laughing at her and says that she smells delicious. But she replies that she does not have food with her and notices that, thanks to him, she will not have prey. The hero reminds that he has already apologized for the pit, after which his stomach begins to rumble again. Then he realizes that this is the end, and informs that he is not encroaching on the girl's territory, and therefore immediately decides to go from here. Asuta realizes that no matter how much he apologizes, the sound of his stomach speaks for him, and notices that the girl is already literally shaking with anger. Then he closes his eyes and decides to say goodbye to his apparently second life. Suddenly, the girl's face changes a lot, and the sword falls out of her hands, which makes the hero decide to ask if she really feels bad. She says that she has had enough words and starts crying, but then realizes that she cannot remain silent. But suddenly the girl exhales and starts laughing. The hero begins not to understand her reaction, seeing that she was holding back her laughter. However, she then points the sword at him again and informs him that she will kill him. Asuta screams, asking why the girl wants to do this, after which she replies that she has never been humiliated like this and therefore promises to finish him off. Then the hero begins to apologize for hurting her self-esteem, explaining that his stomach is to blame for everything. Realizing that she needs to be convinced somehow, he asks not to kill him, saying he did not know where he was and how to behave. The girl says that she does not understand what he wants to say at all. She notices that he is clearly not from the Stone City and does not look like a man from the Western Kingdom, after which the hero reminds that he is from Japan. Then she suggests that he go to her apartment, where he can tell everything. In addition, she promises to kill the hero and bury him if he refuses. Asuta asks if she is afraid to call him to her, but she replies that at night he will simply die in the forest without fire. Then, the hero decides to introduce himself, and is called Tsurumi Asuta, but the girl, trying to pronounce it, calls him Toru Asuta. He repeats the correct pronunciation, but the girl pronounces his first and last name in a different way. In this case, the hero suggests that she just call him by his first name and asks what the girl's name is. She introduces herself to I Foy, after which she turns her back on him. After a moment, she turns around and asks what he is waiting for, telling him to take hold of her shoulder. He is a little surprised, but Ifa replies that time is a valuable resource for them and asks him to grab it. The hero fulfills her request, but after that, the girl is embarrassed and pushes him away. Then she asks who allowed him to touch her breasts, because she said to hold her shoulder, and he says that he understood. Suddenly, Ifa notices that Asuta is hiding a blade at his chest, which makes him nervous. He begins to convince the girl that he is not going to harm her, and asks her to relax. But she doesn't understand what she needs to worry about and tells him that he can put a blade in her if he wants. However, she then adds that, in that case, she will quickly slit his throat. Then the girl notices that they've wasted their time after all, and says that if Jiba attacks them in such darkness, they will surely die. The hero remembers that this is the beast for which she made a pit trap, and notices that it looks very much like a boar. The girl asks him again, and then he tells her that it is a black beast with big fangs. Ifa confirms that it was Jiba, and concludes that the hero has already seen him. He agrees with her, remembering that it was because of him that he fell into her pit. Suddenly, he notices that the girl's cape looks very much like the fur of a Jiba, and she tells him that it belongs to a charming people who hunt these animals. Then she adds that they live by eating Jiba meat and sell their fangs and horns. According to Atsufa, the residents of the stone capital despise them and call them Guibers, and the hero asks why such an attitude was formed. Then the girl says that the meat of the Jiba is quite tough and has a not very pleasant smell, and therefore those who eat it also acquire such an aroma. But the hero suddenly screams that she does not stink, but on the contrary, it smells quite nice. In response, Ifa decides to remain silent while he continues. Asuta says that his nose feels it perfectly and assumes that this Jiba is probably delicious, because it looks like a boar, and the boar itself is very tasty. Then the girl replies that the food cannot be tasty or cheesy, and the hero notices that this is quite harsh. For him, as a cook, although still inexperienced, such words sound like a challenge. After a while, they come to the right place, and the hero sees some kind of settlement. He immediately notices a pleasant smell and asks how many people live here. The girl says that the villages are spread from north to south, and there are about 500 people, and then adds that it takes half a day to walk from edge to edge. Suddenly, someone turns to her, which causes Ifa to have a clearly non-positive reaction and makes the hero afraid. They are confronted by a guy who asks who is next to her, unattractively noticing Asuta's thinness. But the girl decides not to tell it and replies that it does not concern the guy, calling it Diga-san. In response, he asks her a question. Aren't the Sung ruling the lovely people? Because of this, it can be understood that he is not going to retreat. Then Diga approaches the hero and notices his unusual appearance. He asks what nation Asuta is from, but the girl again replies that it does not concern him. Ifa remembers that she has no debts to the guy's family, and adds that all his chatter is a burden to her, and therefore suggests that he disappear somewhere faster. Diga starts to get angry, but then the girl tells him to challenge her to a duel if he doesn't like something, because otherwise he'd better not show his face to her, because he makes her uncomfortable. After that, Ifa turns around and leaves, so abruptly that the guy jumps up. Then he starts shouting and calling her names, and in addition tells her to be careful and watch out for her head being split open from behind. Confusing her with Jiba, the guys are leaving Digi. The hero notices that it is better to keep good relations with neighbors, although later he admits that it is not for him to say this. Then the girl tells that this guy, on the night when her father died, made his way to her bed and tried to abuse her. Therefore, Ifa beat him after that, so that he could not stand on his feet, and threw him into the river. But now, because she has disgraced the heir of the Song, there is no place for her in the village. She calls Song a serious opponent, and the hero decides to take back his words, saying that he should have been beaten. However, Ifa replies that it doesn't make sense. Moreover, the Soons could have been completely expelled from the settlement after such a thing. The hero agrees with her, when suddenly a rumbling sounds from his stomach. The girl starts to lose her temper and asks if he did it on purpose and if he really wanted to swim. Some time later, they come to a small house, and Ifa tells Asuta to come in. When he goes inside, he is surprised to notice that you need to take off your shoes here. At first, the girl decides to cook a meal, since she is already extremely tired of the sounds of the hero's stomach, and he expresses his gratitude. Asuta starts to look around and asks if her family is at home, but she says that her father died, as she said before, and her mother died even earlier. Then she points out again that he is making noise and tells him to sit quietly, which the hero decides to immediately agree with. After that, the girl takes off her cape. Asuta notices that the smell has become even stronger, when suddenly the girl turns to him. He immediately jumps up, asking what happened. Ifa asked me to tell you what he hides under his clothes, because it is customary for the forest people when someone comes to someone else's house. The hero begins to take out a knife and asks if it is necessary, but the girl replies that it must be done since he stayed the night there. Suddenly, he realizes that he may be here precisely because of Santoku's knife. Then Asuta decides to hand the girl a knife and informs her that this thing is very important to him. He asks her to treat him carefully, and she says that she never treats things with carelessness. Suddenly, she assumes that this blade was given to him by his parents, and he confirms her guesses. Then Ifa falls silent. Then she steps aside and says that people who spit on the family do not exist in the diligent people. After a while, the girl comes out with a pot in her hands, and the hero jumps up at the same moment. He is a little surprised by this kind of dishes, and the girl notices it. Ifa reports that it is not ready yet, but the hero explains that he is interested in culinary culture, since in some way this is his job. He glances at the contents and screams. The hero is surprised by such a large amount of food, as he thinks it's a lot for two. But the girl does not understand him and informs him that she does not know what he is talking about. Then she pulls a piece of meat out of a pot of boiling water, when suddenly Asuta notices that it is covered with spices and assumes that it is jibba meat. Despite the fact that the dish looks quite harsh, at the same time it has quite an appetizing appearance. Suddenly, the girl notices the expression on his face and turns around, not quite asking why he is smiling. From this, Asuta is distracted by her and replies that the dish just looks delicious. However, she, gritting her teeth, reminds that there is neither tasty nor shoddy food. Then she turns back to the pot, while the hero awkwardly looks away. Suddenly, Ifa rises and informs them that they have time until the meat is cooked, after which she asks the hero to tell her about himself. Then Asuta removes the bandage from his head and tells the girl about where and how he lived these 17 years before he got here. In addition, he says that he already thought he was dead, but he woke up here as if nothing had happened. Because of this, at that moment he concluded that he had landed in a strange country on his planet. Then the hero notices another oddity, because he does not speak any language other than Japanese. But he can communicate with Ai Foi, despite the fact that she has never heard of Japan before. In response, the girl decides to remain silent, after which Asuta asks to tell him at least some clue about where he is. Then she tells that both the villages of Prylesia and the stone capital of Genos are located on the land of the western kingdom of Selva. Also, according to her, there are as many people living in the western throne city as there are stars in the sky. She then tells that the people of Selva worship a deity of the west named Selva, and that there are 4 kingdoms on the mainland of Amushon which have 4 deities. In a muskhole, where all the kingdoms have their own deity, whom they worship, there is no such people who are not patronized by one of the 4 great gods. Without gods, only beasts. Suddenly, the girl asks if Asuta doesn't know about this either. He replies that, unfortunately, this is the case. He suggests that it could be a tribe unknown to him, and a boar not listed in Japanese reference books, although this is very unlikely. However, Asuta has already made a conclusion. He realizes that this is not the world he lived in before. Suddenly, the hero turns to Ai Fi and asks if there was anyone else who said that he died and appeared in this world. But she replies that she has not heard of such a thing. Then Asuta concludes that he must have been thrown here from a completely different world. It's like he fell out of the sky, and by some misunderstanding, Japanese is also understood here. The hero immediately begins to realize that he will no longer see either his father or Reina. He will not give them the knife either, and there is no question of returning to his world at all. He believes out of his last hopes that he just hit his head and sees nonsense, because he was left here alone. This fact is very scary for him to realize. Suddenly, he is distracted by a girl who reports that she has figured everything out, after which she notices that the meat has just been cooked. She lifts the lid, and the hero sees a lot of scale there. He asks if the girl heard what she wanted, and she says that she realized that the hero either came from another world or just turned out to be a madman who is sure of it. Asuta assumes that since she understood this, she believed him, since her gaze at that moment was quite serious. Then she says that the hero is definitely not lying, and therefore concludes that he is just crazy. From these words, he calms down a little and decides to express gratitude, looking at how something is happening in the pan. The girl begins to be perplexed by the fact that the hero was glad that she called him crazy, but he replies that this is not so. Asuta explains that he was glad that she believed the words of a weirdo she met for the first time in her life, even though she thinks he's crazy. Then Ifa asks what he will do next, and the hero replies that he has nowhere to go now, and that he has not thought about it yet. After that, she wonders if there is a way to return back to his world, but he reminds me that he doesn't even know how he got here, let alone to return back to his world. Suddenly, he is distracted from his thoughts and notices Ai-Fi's displeased look. Asuta asks her to tell her right away if he is in the way, after which he promises to leave immediately. But the girl understands that he does not know how to spend the night in the forest, and either Jiba or Munto will eat him there. Ai-Fa sums it up by saying once Diga saw them together and that the hero doesn't even know about the four great gods. Then if Asuta violates any prohibition, it will be her responsibility. So she tells him to stay in her sight for a while until she gets at least a little common sense and the rules of the forest people into his head, after which he can go and die anywhere. The hero replies that he understood everything and expresses his sincere gratitude to her, making a bow. But the girl suddenly cries out in displeasure, asking why he is bowing here. At this time, Asuta thinks about what Ai-Fa told him, that he could stay, and begins to rejoice that she was the first person he met here. After that, the girl reports that the meat is definitely cooked. She puts food on a separate plate for the hero and tells him to eat. He expresses gratitude and notices that the dish smells delicious. However, the hero is still concerned about the fact that she did not scum at all. The girl notices that he has thought about it and unhappily clarifies whether he will eat. Then he tastes the dish and tries to guess what she cooked the meat with: onions or potatoes. At one point, Asuta begins to feel the taste of food and immediately screams that it's rubbish, which makes the house shake. After that, it's time to sleep. And at this time, the hero remembers his past, when he was called to butcher a boar. He was a little afraid to try, but he decided to do it anyway. After a while, Asuta exhales with relief and informs that everything is ready, while his father replies that they have already cooked the boar stew. Asuta asks if this is really made from what he sliced, which in response he is called silly, since the meat needs to be aged for several days. After that, the guys start eating. The hero screams that the dish is delicious, and there is no rotting smell in it at all. Then his father adds that it is not greasy at all, and it is easy to eat. Suddenly, Reina asks if they will eat the meat that the hero cut, but in response, he promises to cook her a deer. The girl says that she feels sorry for the deer, but then she is asked a counter question about whether she feels sorry for the boar. The hero remembers how good that boar stew smelled, which he ate on a hike, while Ai-Fa is trying to bring him to himself. He realizes that it is getting very noisy when suddenly he gets hit. The girl informs him that if she allowed him to stay, it does not mean that he will eat for free, and Asuta agrees with her. She then gives him dried jiba meat as breakfast and tells him that as soon as he eats, they will leave the house immediately. But when the hero tastes the meat, he realizes that it does not chew at all, and even the blood has not been drained properly, which is why he calls it disgusting. But then he notices an irritated and frowning face, which makes him try to eat everything quickly. Suddenly, the hero turns and sees a pot. He remembers that last night's dinner was something. That meat smelled like a beast, was tough and sticky with fat. The girl cut the onion, but it was just there and did not affect the taste in any way. The potatoes were heavily overcooked, which made them melt like powder, and there was only black pepper from the seasonings. The hero mentally called it torture, although the smell of the dish was very pleasant. While he was trying to stuff it into himself, the girl thought that he was not full and offered to pour him more. But suddenly, Ai-Fi's cry for him to chew faster distracts him from his thoughts, which makes him hurry up. Then the girl informs that before the sun rises high into the sky, you need to have time to collect the yard and piko leaves. He replies that he understood and asks Santoku about his knife, and Ai-Fa remembers about that blade. She tells him to go to the storeroom and get it. Then the hero goes there, and when he goes inside the room, he notices a strong smell of spices. He immediately finds a knife and also notices a leaf that looks like raw materials for spices. The hero begins to look around, when suddenly a girl calls out to him. Ai-Fa starts shouting at him to move, as they have already spent a lot of time. Then she reminds him again that they need to hurry up, when suddenly she notices that they are not listening to her. The girl sees that he is staring at the groceries. Then she asks why he is looking at the pantry, since he is not going to eat it anyway. But the answer is that he tells her that he is the son of a cook. Suddenly, he realizes that he wants to tell her something, despite the fact that this girl does not care about the taste of food at all. However, the hero decides to do it anyway. He decides to ask her to let him cook dinner for her from that evening on, in gratitude for sheltering him. but at first he gets silence in response. But then she asks him again, displeased. The girl concludes that the hero wants to thank her for what even a child can do, after which he calls him a fool and asks him to stop generating such ideas. Asuta begins to deny this and convince her that the cooking he knows about is very different from the local one. But Ifa calls food only a means of survival, which the hero also begins to deny. He says that this is not only a remedy and asks her to test his culinary skills, as it may benefit her a little. Then the girl decides to put up with it and tells Asuta to do as he wants. The hero gets permission to cook. The girl notices that he has made a very pretentious statement and informs him that he will not be well if this turns out to be a childish prank. He rushes to her, asking what she means, but Ifa tells him to go. Walking through the forest, the hero begins to feel the heat and suddenly looks at one plant. But the girl replies that they do not need it, since the pico leaves grow on the riverbank. He agrees with her, wondering how she noticed that he stopped. Asuta concludes that pico leaves are the raw material for black pepper, as he saw them dried in a pantry. Ifa agrees with him and tells him that the meat is rubbed in, that it did not rot, but the effect lasts only a month. Then the hero approaches another plant and asks if these fruits are used for anything, when suddenly the girl tells him to take his hands off. Asuta immediately freezes, and she informs that it is forbidden to take away grace from Mount Mulji. The girl tells them that they can only collect inedible grass for themselves, since Mulga Mountain and the forest nearby are the land of the western kingdom of Selva. Then she says that the lovely people originally lived in the southern kingdom of Jagal, from where they escaped. Here, they were allowed to settle on the condition that they would hunt jibe. So, they became a people of eating jib. The hero realizes that jiba is rather perceived as a pest, when suddenly Ifa calmly informs that if he violates the ban, he will be scalped, which makes him afraid. After that, they hit the road again. The guys approach the riverbank, and the hero notices that there are no plants here. Suddenly, the girl comes forward and tells that, before looking for pico leaves, you need to take a bath. The hero falls into a stupor and concludes that they do not need to come here. But suddenly, Ifa turns to him and asks him to hold her things, since she is all sticky with fat. The girl begins to take off her clothes while he asks her to stop. He is surprised that even here the matter has acquired an obscene character, when suddenly the girl decides to say, just in case, that you can't look at an unmarried woman without clothes. Then the hero closes his eyes. But suddenly he realizes that he can probably look at a married woman and immediately bulges his eyes. From these words, the girl becomes dissatisfied and simply asks him to watch while she washes so that no one sneaks up from behind, and not to look here. The hero has no choice but to just sit and wait, since the girl told him not to look, and her things are so heavy that you can't move your legs. Then he glances at the rock and realizes that it is very disturbing to him, since it was behind it that Ifa went. Asuta thinks that if he sees her without clothes, he will be promised paradise on earth. When suddenly she notices something. Suddenly, a girl screams, which distracts the hero. He immediately jumps up and looks out from behind the rock, asking about what happened and asking her to answer. But without receiving an answer, he realizes that something has happened and therefore decides to go to her. The hero informs that he will have to look at the girl despite the fact that she told him not to do it. Looking at the river, he does not notice Ifu and is horrified to conclude that she was swept away. Then, he decides to save her, when suddenly the girl emerges from the water and tells him not to approach. At the same moment, a large snake appears from under the water, grabbing her. The hero is frightened by this sight and notices that the beast has wrapped its left arm around him. Asuta gets hurt, but he decides that this is his chance. The hero informs the girl that he will pull her out of the water with a snake and tells her to get ready for a push. He lets the snake wrap around his arm even more, after which he makes a swing and hits the beast and the girl hard against the rock, forcing him to release her. The hero begins to rejoice that the snake has crawled away and rushes to Ai Fei. He decides to pull her away, as her bones may be broken. After which he pushes the snake, and her body falls into the water. Suddenly, Asuta notices that the girl is coming to her senses and asks if she can breathe. She replies that she only took a sip of water. At this time, the hero is staring at her breasts, although he understands that he can be killed for this, when suddenly the girl pushes him away. Then she grabs a knife, and Asuta asks her to stop. saying that he did not look at anything and did not see anything. But in the same second, he gets hit several times and falls to the ground. When he opens his eyes, he sees that it has become dark and begins to hear Ai-Fi's voice. She realizes that he is alive and tells him to get out quickly. Then the hero gets out from under Giba's body and realizes what happened. The girl tells him that the beast was behind him and tells him to always be on his guard. Asuta looks serious and agrees with her, although he does not like the fact that she teaches him while completely naked. But the girl again asks him not to look at her, as another time she may gouge out his eyes for this. However, since he saved her today, she decides not to do so, in response to which Asuta also decides to thank her for saving her. When Ai-Fa gets dressed, the hero informs them that they now have a fresh jib. The girl offers to dismember him immediately, but he says that first, you need to drain the blood. Ai-Fa begins to look at him with a puzzled look, and then the hero understands what is the matter. He says that the stink of meat is the stink of blood, which just needs to be drained. But the girl replies that the blood will flow from the meat. But then she declares that in any case, they will only carry their hind legs and is going to cut them off. The hero immediately stops her and asks her to let him do it. At first, the girl falls silent, but then she agrees. Asuta understands that he is facing a difficult task, since draining blood is not easy. It is necessary to cut the aorta or carotid artery while the animal's heart is still pounding. Besides, this is not a boar, and the structure of its body is not yet known to the hero. Then he turns to the blade and asks it to achieve the goal. Suddenly, blood begins to pour out of the beast's body, and the hero realizes that he is pierced, which he screams about. The girl begins not to understand why he is doing this, since they only need the hind legs of horns and fangs. But Asuta calls this waste. He decides to make sure that she tastes a lot more delicious, and not just the hind legs. Then the hero realizes that the animal has expired, which means that evisceration can begin, and begins to extract the insides, trying not to damage them. After a while, Asuta finishes and informs the girl that he wants to take the whole body of Jiba home, waiting for her approval. But then he asks her to wait to build a special structure. A little later, when she sees what the hero has done, the girl screams in delight and says that they will drag it together, which he is not happy about. Panting from the effort, Asuta suggests that now they can do different things, since they now have a skin. The girl asks about what things can be done, and he gives an example of her robe. Then she calls him a fool and tells him that leather dressing is the work of women, and fur, moreover, can be bought for Jiba's fangs. The hero decides that women are also hunting Jiba, and Ai-Fa calls him a fool again, since there are no such women. Asuta begins to wonder, looking at her, and the girl tells that she is, first of all, the head of the Fa family and learned hunting from her father. Suddenly, Ai-Fa notices that the hero has been out of breath for a long time and offers him a rest if he feels unwell, when suddenly, he screams that he is not such a strong monster like her. Then he asks not to force him to remember that image dear to his heart and offers to continue walking. But the girl says that now she wants to find out what kind of image it is. After a while, he sits down on the ground from extreme fatigue. He remembers that in the end, he also had to go for the pico leaves. Suddenly, the girl notices with displeasure that he is even weaker than a woman. From this, Asuta first falls into a stupor, and then begins to laugh. He says that he saved his strength for the huge work that lies ahead. But she admits that she does not understand him. Suddenly, the hero rises to his feet, forcing her to be wary, and declares that they will now dismember this jibe. The hero informs that the board, jiba, knives, and so on are in place, after which he informs that now they will remove the skin from jiba and dismember the body. However, then he notices that the girl has no interest in what is happening. Then Asuta asks her to watch, as it will be interesting now, but she does not answer anything and falls asleep. After a while, the hero shows her how he took off the skin and tells her what needs to be cut, so that there is no fat left on the skin. Therefore, he first makes a hole in the torso, and then pulls and makes a hole again. But suddenly, Asuta notices that she is asleep again and starts calling her to wake her up. From this, the girl screams that she is not sleeping and immediately attacks the hero. Then the hero realizes that after such an incident, anyone will get tired and decides to remove the fat stuck to the knife before cutting the meat. But suddenly, he realizes that he also really wants to sleep, which makes his eyes bulge. Now he needs to finish the butchering, otherwise his valuable meat will spoil. However, despite this, Asuta decides to do everything for the sake of a delicious dinner. First, he sticks a knife into the inside of the hip joint and turns the joint out, which already turns out to be hard work. Then the bones begin to appear, which means that you only need to trim the veins and tendons. His strength is already running out, and the hero is attacked by drowsiness. In addition, the girl also looks very obscene, which is why Asuta decides to devote himself entirely to cooking and creating food, discarding everything. After a while, she falls exhausted to the ground. He announces that he is finished, when suddenly Ifa starts poking at him with his foot to keep him awake. The hero replies that he is not sleeping, but the girl thinks otherwise. Then Asuta decides to laugh it off. Then Fa takes the seasoning from the crushed pico leaves, as the meat will rot if it is not added quickly. The hero remembers that they were just picking these leaves, and the girl replies that it's not time to sleep. Then she takes out the vegetables, and Asuta is presented with 4 poitons and 6 arias. But before he cooks, he would like to make sure of something. The hero asks if it is necessary to eat all those vegetables that she brought. Then the girl screams about whether he really thinks to stay healthy, eating only meat, which causes him to fall into a stupor. Ifa is interested in the reason that caused the surprised expression on his face, but the hero replies that he is of the same opinion. He is a little struck by an adequate reaction and then realizes that in this world there is a concept of a balanced diet. However, now he has only the meat of the captured Giba in priority. Then he takes out his father's knife again and starts slicing lard, into which the blade enters without problems. The hero understands that the knife is in excellent condition, and you can cook everything with it. Suddenly, he decides to ask if there are any other spices and something edible in this house, since he should have the opportunity for an idea. The girl replies that there is fruit wine and salt, and the hero pays attention to the latter. She says that if you eat 3 arias and 2 poitons with giba meat, then you can forget about the elements for a while, and that salt is necessary for cooking dried meat. While the hero notices that the girl suddenly became dissatisfied, he understands that if they use salt to dry meat, they will surely find out that this seasoning prevents rotting. At this time, Ifa leaves and returns, taking salt with him, as well as fruit wine. The hero takes a large sheet and, when he unfolds it, sees blue rock salt. The girl tells him that it is necessary for the exchange, and that such an amount is enough to buy the horns of 1 jiba, after which she asks him not to use salt in vain. Then Asuta understands why her mood has deteriorated and promises that she will use salt carefully, although, to tell the truth, he also wanted to try fruit wine. But suddenly he notices that the girl, as if nothing had happened, starts drinking wine from a jug and screams. The hero asks if it's too early to drink wine at that age, and assumes that she does it out of desperation. But she replies that she is 17. Then she adds that she is free to decide whether to drink or not, and Asuta remembers that this is not Japan. He assumes that the calendar is different here, and that the girl did not live exactly as many years as she said. But then he screams that they are the same age, although the girl does not understand why she needs this information. The hero replies that there is nothing important in this, and receives in response an incomprehensible reaction, similar to his own. After that, he returns to cooking. First, he decides to take an aria, similar to onions and jiba meat, with lard of about 900 grams, and then begins cooking. In the boiling water, the hero puts about 15 grams of rock salt and immediately after it, the meat of the jiba. After a while, a lot of scale appears and he decides to remove it, since otherwise he will make the same mistake as Ifa yesterday. At this time, the girl enters the room with firewood in her hands, but Asuta asks her to wait a little, since now there is no need to throw them up. She begins not to understand why, because if the meat is not boiled in boiling water, then it will be impossible to eat it. The hero agrees with her and explains that this is why he wants to cook it slowly over low heat. A lot of scale was formed from those parts where there is fresh fat, but he took off quite a lot of it and therefore decides to cook the meat well. Then he tells the girl that the problem is with a thing that looks like a potato, and she calls him a poitan. But the hero reports that he cannot put this mess in a cauldron. Asuta notices that she has been strongly insisting on poitan and aria lately, but she replies that he does not understand anything. She says that if he'll eat jiba meat, mixed with 2 poitons, 3 arias, and pico leaves, then he will get a lot of strength. Ifa says that these forces can last for a whole day and calls it the wisdom of the people of the forest. At this time, the hero notices that this is just like the diet of sumo wrestlers. Dried meat in the morning and absorption of all the necessary nutrients in the evening. Then the girl decides to ask when it will be possible to eat since she is very hungry, and the sun is already set, and the hero replies that very soon. He goes to the pot and informs her that more scum will appear very soon, which makes the girl change her face. She asks if it hasn't boiled, but Asuta replies that it hasn't, and decides to scale it again. Then he tells me that after that he will add the aria and cook for about an hour. Ifa asks again if this is really necessary, and the hero replies that yes. He says it takes about 2 and 3 times longer to cook compared to yesterday, which is why the girl falls to the ground. From this, the hero begins to be perplexed and apologizes to her. But the depressed Ifa begins to crawl on the ground and say that she said that she trusted him and was responsible for not bothering to find out the details. Asuta realizes that she is very hungry since she is so desperate, but still asks her to wait a little longer. He is filled with confidence and promises to treat her to a very tasty dish. Then he adds more firewood, and the water begins to boil, after which he adds more pico leaves. Finally, after some more time, the hero informs that the hibi soup is ready. He introduces this dish to Ifi and says that this is what she has been waiting for, asking her to eat as much as she likes. The girl notices that he did not put the fountain, but the hero asks her to just try. After that, they sit down and start the meal. The hero stays here and realizes that he has achieved what he wanted. He made a fragrant soup where spices are perfectly combined with meat. But then he glances at the girl and gets silence in return. Then the hero decides to gather his courage and try the meat of the jiba. He begins to feel the lard and meat melting in his mouth and how well aria has gone into the soup. The hero understands that he cooked it delicious, but the girl's behavior makes him more anxious. Then he decides to turn to her and ask her how she likes the soup. However, she replies that she is sure that the impressions of food do not make sense. Then he notices that he spent a lot of time cooking and asks if it was really pointless. The girl replies that for her food is a means of survival, which cannot be tasty or cheesy. But then, when the hero already has time to despair, she adds that she clearly understood what exactly is called delicious. Ifa says that the process of eating is pleasant in itself and suggests that she herself became happy because she ate something delicious. Then the girl assumes that she has understood the reason why the hero is passionate about cooking and why he is embarrassed. Then, for lack of suitable words, she admits that he is right. Seeing the expression on Asuta's face, she asks him not to make such a face and informs him that he got a delicious dish. But he expresses gratitude and understands that he wants to get the girl's recognition of his existence because his heart is on fire. 4 days have passed since that moment. Now the biggest difficulty is that he couldn't cook the poiton properly. He collects firewood and herbs until noon, and after that he studies the fountain with the permission of Ifi. Asuta is limited to using 1 poiton per day. Then he tells me that if you cook this plant, it becomes soft. If fried, it falls apart. If fried in oil, it becomes powdery lard. But then the hero adds that poiton is also bitter and does not understand what to do with it. Suddenly he gets hit by Ifi. She tells him to shut up and he apologizes, congratulating her on her return. It turns out that while he is cooking poiton, the girl goes hunting. She informs him that she wants to give him something, and the hero receives clothes and a dagger. The girl says that her father left these things to her, and the hero begins to doubt whether to accept them. Then she reports that she feels shame on the riverbank with him. That is, at the washing place. Seeing that he did not understand, she tells him that he stands out in his snow-white clothes, and says that this is why she is ashamed of him. In the end, the hero decides to accept it and promises to treat her carefully. But the girl perceives this as foolishness and asks if he has figured out how to make poiton delicious. Asuta replies that there is no progress at the moment and decides from that day on to use less poiton, since the girl allocates valuable products to him. But he could not do anything. But she says that this is impossible, since there are 2 poitons and 3 arias, so as not to catch some kind of illness. The hero notices that she is very healthy, and assumes that this is due to a proper diet. Then an epiphany comes to him, and he realizes that if we assume that Arya is an onion, then there is one missing element of nutrition. The girl does not understand his reaction, when suddenly he rushes into her arms. The hero calls the girl the best, because thanks to her, he found the answer. The hero understands that poitan is a grain. He doesn't want to think that Ifa doesn't get carbohydrates and remembers that this plant tasted like flour. Then he concludes that poitan is a potato-like cereal, but he cannot be sure of this and decides to conduct a test. He's going to make a new poitan dish. Asuta recalls that after he spontaneously hugged the girl, she beat him pretty badly and then went hunting. The hero thinks about the fact that the poitan loses its viscosity when boiling and dissolves in water, and concludes that it is already flour dissolved in water, deciding that it is necessary to make just flour out of it. He cooks the poitan in a small amount of water, which turns it into a gel, and puts it in the fire, leaving it to dry in the sun for an hour. After the mass has solidified, the hero crumbles everything into flour and decides to dissolve it in water. Then he puts it on the fire and gets a kind of wheat flour, which can act as a thickener. In this case, he decides to challenge what he hesitated before, but then wonders, will Ifa be happy? When she returns, he informs her that he is going to challenge a new dish, but she tells him to do whatever he wants. After that, she moves into the sleeping Buddha pose with an angry look, which is why Asuta decides to defuse the situation. He tells her that he is trying on her father's clothes, but Ifa replies that it does not suit him. Then the hero just starts cooking. He takes out the ingredients and discovers that the meat has not deteriorated in 5 days, which is surprising. Then the hero starts cutting and glances away. Asuta replaces lard with butter and toasts the sliced Arya, suppressing the fruit wine. At this time, the girl is watching him closely. Then, to the toasted Arya and minced jiba, he adds salt, pico, and magic extract. The hero adds a decoction of poitan as a thickener and begins to knead the mass. He decides to leave the fire small and realizes that the minced meat turned out to be beautiful, pink. Then Asuta starts a fight and in one fell swoop roast one side of the cutlets over high heat and then the other. After which, he adds chopped Arya and fruit wine. He says that if you cook over high heat, it is better to use an oven, and hopes that the cutlets will turn out delicious, when suddenly he hears a sound from behind. The hero gets a little scared and asks why Ifa came here, to which she replies that this is her place, and she has the right to go wherever she wants. Asuta assumes that she is interested and begins to feel pressure. Then he asks the girl to hold the plate, and she immediately fulfills his request. The hero is a little surprised that she has been waiting all this time and asks for it again, after which the same thing happens. He decides to add more sauce and asks Ifu to bring plates to pour over the cutlets, which she immediately does. For himself, Asuta notices her agility and finally informs her that the hamburger patties are ready, after which he leaves. After a while, he takes out the bread and says that he turned the poitan into this. It turns out that when heated, the poitan flour in water becomes similar to a rice base. Suddenly, the hero suggests that you start eating faster so that the food doesn't get cold. After sitting down, he wishes a pleasant appetite, unlike the girl, after which he notices that she was grumbling about something. The hero informs that it is better to eat bread with meat, and begins to worry about whether he will be able to accept the result himself. Finally, he decides to do it and begins to feel the spreading taste of meat and the aroma of fruit wine. The cutlets turned out to be saturated and well chewed. In addition, they went well with baked poitan. The hero remembers with what suffering he ate it when suddenly Ifa asks what he is smiling about. From this, he immediately comes to his senses and decides to ask if she liked the dish. But suddenly he notices that she has eaten almost all the poitan in the cutlet. The girl replies that it was delicious for her, and the hero thanks her. He then asks her to tell him more, but she immediately refuses. Then he decides to apologize for hugging her, when suddenly the girl is embarrassed and says that she is tired of him, and therefore refuses to talk. The hero remains perplexed to look at her, which makes her even more embarrassed. She asks Asuta not to do this, while he decides that if she said that the dish is delicious, then that's enough. Suddenly, a girl looks around the corner and asks what they are eating. The hero is interested in who it is, when suddenly Ifa tells her to go home, calling her Ryouridou. Then he realizes that the girls are familiar, but Rimi reminds them that they haven't seen each other for a long time, begins to be interested in what they eat, and assumes that the hero is Ifi's husband. But she begins to deny it. After which the hero asks who this girl is at all. The girl introduces herself to Ryouridou and says that she is friends with Ifoi. But she says that she can't stand children like her and asks her to go home. This causes the girl to scream, and the hero notices that Ifa was rude to her. Then she admits that she lied to her and explains that she has incurred the wrath of the Song family, which is why a girl from the Ryu family may have problems because of her. But in the end, Ifa decides to let the girl go, which she begins to rejoice. She says that her father said that the Song family is not scary, but the girl replies that the head of the Dongru family has such a character. At this time, the hero does not understand what the conversation is about. Then he decides to remind himself, and Rimi tells him that her father told her not to approach such a suspicious person. But Asuta notices that she approached him anyway, and she explains that in Giru Fa's robes, he no longer looks like an outsider. The hero concludes that Giru Fa is Ifa's father. Suddenly, Rimi assumes that the girl accepted him into the family, since she gave him these clothes, which is why she begins to justify herself. The hero begins to be offended by this, and he decides to offer her food and calm down, when suddenly, Rimi is attracted to food again. The hero tells that it is made of meat and poitan, and the girl immediately asks to give it a try. Then he gives her a cutlet and says that it is not easy jiba meat, after which he clarifies whether he is violating any prohibition. Asuta understands that he has already done a lot of things that cannot be done in Japan, and hopes to hear impressions about food not only from Isekai'd. The girl screams that it is delicious and is surprised by the taste of jiba meat, which the hero begins to rejoice. Then she starts shaking him from side to side, asking about cooking, and Asuta realizes that she is very strong. Suddenly, Ifa notices that Rimi was not taught that it is impossible to interfere with the meal, forcing her to apologize. At this time, the hero tries to come to his senses and thanks the girl. Then, she informs that it is already dusk and suggests that the girl go home. Then, she thanks them for the treat and asks the hero what his name is. He introduces himself to Tsurumi Asuta and corrects her pronunciation. Suddenly, Rimi starts asking Ifu to let the elder of the Ryu house taste this dish, since he will leave them very soon. The hero falls into a stupor and glances towards the girl. Ifa asks if the hero is really going to go to Ryu's house, and he replies that yes, because Giba's grandmother is an important person for her and for Rimi. Then he decides to protect at least someone, and the story is transferred the day before. The hero asks if Giba's grandmother can come when the food is ready, that is, by tomorrow evening. Ifa says that according to custom, Asuta should come to Ryu's house, and then decides to ask Ryu to come for them early. She agrees and thanks for the reception. Suddenly, the hero notices that the girl has become gloomy, and she tells him that she also wanted to help Rimi, but at the same time admitting that she wanted to refuse. Then he asks why she didn't do that. Ifa says that 2 years ago, after a quarrel with Diga, she received an offer from the head of the Ryu house to join their family through marriage. But she refused, because she wants to live the life of a huntress. The hero replies that anyone would be confused by this. According to the girl, Dondaru, the head of the family, said with a smile that in this case, the Soons would either not touch her, or they would be destroyed in response. Therefore, Ifa refused and broke off all relations with Ryu. The hero notices that these family relationships contradict free will, but the girl says that they initially had such a share. She says that the trouble is that the Ryu family has many families, even by the standards of the forest area, and therefore does not want to get involved with them. But the girl is worried that the hero may be involved in the enmity of these families. He immediately informs her that he does not want to see such an expression on her face. He says he wants to see Savior's smile, after which she expresses gratitude. After that, the story is transferred to the present time. Asuta tells Rimi that she doesn't have to be so respectful, and remarks that it's very good that she came early, since there is a dusty job. Then the guys set off, and along the way the hero notices that the buildings in the settlement are made with taste, unlike the house of Ifai. Rimi says that there are now 13 relatives in Ryu's house, which he is surprised at. Asuta assumes that he will be able to find dishes for so many people in their house, since he was allowed to use the utensils, and the girl agrees with him. Suddenly, Ifa gives her his dagger, which makes the hero start to wonder. But then Remy says that he will have to do it before entering someone else's house. When they arrive, Asuta falls into a stupor, and Ifa remembers that he has not seen any women except her and Remy. After that, he is introduced to Tisho Shinru, the wife of the previous head, Vina, the eldest daughter, and Reina, the second oldest. The name of the latter seems familiar to the hero and makes him remember the past. He turns to Reina from his family and apologizes to her for promising to cook her a boar stew. But in the end, he could not keep his promise. Then, while everyone around him is actively communicating, Asuta remembers his father. He apologizes to him for leaving him alone and even so upset. This almost makes the hero start to cry when suddenly someone distracts him. Suddenly, he notices her gaze on him and tells her that this was the name of one of his acquaintances, although she notices that he's sad and assumes that it is because of her. Asuta denies this, saying that this is not the case at all, when suddenly Remy informs him that she introduced all the Rus to him, and he is surprised that everything ended so quickly. Then the girl decides to introduce herself and the hero. She then informs them that today, at Remy's request, they have come to use the hearth of the Ru house. Then Taisho Shin greets them and informs them that he will help the hero with the reina in order to learn how to cook it. Suddenly, Vina turns to him and asks if he was born in another country, and clarifies the reason why he does not tell about his place of birth. He decides to tell them that he was born in Japan and that he had not heard of the mainland Amushon. He suggests that it may be difficult to understand while the girl is thinking about it. Suddenly, she calls him a foreigner who does not know about Amaskol, right in the middle of this continent, and smiles a little, expressing doubt. After that, Remy invites everyone to the hearth, and the hero, as soon as he enters the room, immediately notices the hearths for frying meat and for cooking. Entering the house, the hero decides to use their hearth, when suddenly, Reina asks if he is not going to cook meat, since he wants to cook it softer for Jiba, as she heard. He notices that she is perceptive. Then the girl tells him that she heard that the guys would bring their meat since the family had already cooked their own. But he replies that something remains a mystery to him. He clarifies that he is talking about the decorations on their neck made of 3 kiba fangs. Then Reina says that it is a blessing for health, so that women do not hunt. The hero concludes that this is not just a currency, but something like an accessory. Suddenly, he is distracted by the girls who bring the poiton. He notices Ifai's displeased face, gets scared, and starts cooking. At this time, Tisho Shin asks if the girl really caught this jiba personally, and she replies that yes. Then the woman admits that she can't imagine what it's like, but Ifa says that her father taught her hunting and survival. After that, the woman assumes that she will die alone, since she does not need anyone, and concludes that the Fa family will soon disappear if she does not have children. At this time, Remy asks if there is enough water in the pan, and the hero replies that this is exactly what is needed. He cuts the meat and turns around to see what mood Ifa is in. Seeing her unhappy and sad face, he immediately begins to worry about what happened. But then he pulls himself together and goes back to cooking. The hero notices that the poiton has been boiled and says that if it is digested, it will become like glue. He then adds that Reina cooks as if she had already done it, and she says that she has tried many ways to make it easier for Jiba to eat. Then Asuta decides to entrust it to her and tells her the recipe. He then takes out the meat, but Remy reports that she has never seen such a thing. Then he tells me that this is meat between the shoulder blades of a jiba. Tisho Shin tells the girl that the family has only legs, and this is a novelty for them. And the hero remembers that Ifa did the same and assumes that legs alone are not enough for a family. The woman agrees and says that their men catch 2 gibs every day and then cut off their legs and throw them into the gorge so that the rest of the people of the forest area do not get it. There, these remnants will be eaten by Munto, who will return Giba's soul to the forest. The hero says that the rest cannot be thrown away, and Tisho Shin adds that, because of this, a people without pride can be born, who will extract the meat of the jibe without strength. Then he notices for himself that everything here is harsh in terms of customs and informs that he is going to chop the meat. After that, he helps the guys a little in cooking, and they get minced meat. Remy says that it was fun. when suddenly the hero takes the poitan for another and informs him that now he needs to cook an aria. Then he wants the girl to take him to the pantry and decides to ask Fu to help him. Once there, he calls the room a food treasure trove. The girl points to Arya, when suddenly Reina approaches the hero and offers other products. However, he decides to refuse, after which he remains alone with Ifoy. The hero thinks about how she felt when she saw the pantry and invites the girls to return. But suddenly Ifa starts to hear someone's voice, which sounds very aggressive. Remy runs out to meet Donda's father, and Asuta realizes that this is the one who started the conversation about the wedding with Ifoy. Suddenly, the man notices him and recognizes him as a stranger who has rolled into Fa's house, noticing that he is indeed Snow White. As rumor has it, the hero also recognizes in the man Donda Rue, whom Ifa was so afraid of, and persuades himself not to be a coward. The man calls the girl the one who tarnished the honor of the House of Rue and notes her bravery, since she dared to reappear with a stranger. Then he asks if she wants to continue to show her contempt for them, when suddenly Remy screams that she already warned that they would come to cook food for the elder, to which Dondo gave approval. But the man explains to her that if they, being Jibajors, stop eating Jiba, then they will come to an end, which the girl begins to object to. Suddenly, she's interrupted by a guy who says that even though their father is kind, but not always and everywhere, in response to which she asks him to shut up, calling Ryouridou. The hero says that he has no malicious intent, and he came to them to cook food that will help Jibaru, as Remy said. He then introduces himself as the hearthkeeper from Fa's house, which shocks Ifa. Then Donda tells him to hurry up, calling him a kid. He returns to cooking and prepares the last cutlet, asking for the remaining dishes to be served on the girls' table. He is still afraid to look Ifi in the face, because he just had a pathetic conversation with the head of another family. Suddenly, Reina announces that the table is set and everyone is gathered in the hall. Then Asuta decides to enter there and sees a bunch of people in the room, including the emaciated Jibaru. They begin to say a prayer, and he notices that Ifa was doing the same, concluding that he did not hear then that she was thanking him. As a result, the hero realizes that these are the same people, although they are slightly different from him. Therefore, he concludes that they will never leave their family in trouble. At this time, Reina is trying to feed Jibaru a cutlet, when suddenly, the food falls apart a little. Jibaru remains frozen, which causes the hero to fall into a stupor. The girl begins to worry about her, while Donda says that such a soft porridge of meat cannot be called food, offering to give it to Munto. Because of this, Grandma can't stand it and gets to her feet, although Reina asks her not to. The man says that she is probably also angry at the hero, when suddenly she turns to him. Jibaru calls Donda a child who has not changed even after many years. At this time, the others are shocked that she got up and started talking. Jiba adds that what a man does not like should not be disliked by everyone, since this is the mindset of a child. After that, Reina finally persuades her to sit down. Grandma admits that she is no longer at the age to do so, and returns to the hero. She asks if it is possible to continue after she has eaten, and of course, he agrees. The girl finally gives her a taste of the cutlets, and she says that thanks to the hero she remembered the old days when they were not yet called the people of the forest, but were part of the Jagal people. She says that in the south they lived happily, picking fruits and eating lizards. However, then there was a war. The forest was burned, and they were exiled to the forest in the west, like Gibajora. According to Jiba, the mountain did not bestow mercy on them, and one by one they died of hunger, and even if they could kill this beast, its meat was not the most suitable food for them. She says that Jiba meat is tough and smelly, which is why she thought it was better to die than to continue eating such meat. Then Jibaru thanks Asuta, because thanks to him, she remembered the joy of eating. The hero begins to dismiss these words, saying that he just showed how to cook, when suddenly his grandmother decides to bless him and gives him one fang from a necklace. He is about to give it up, since Jiba received this fang from her family, but suddenly Reina whispers to him to accept it as payment for today's work. Then everyone else decides as well, blessing the hero, giving him one fang, but except for one, and Asuta gets a lot of Jiba's fangs. Then Donda tells him not to get too cocky, because he doesn't care what others think about it. Then the man claims that the hero fed him poison, which causes him to fall into a stupor. but then he gets very scared and assumes that he will now be executed for this, and that this is a failure, but the girl tells him to calm down. Ai-Fa notices that everyone else thanked him and blessed him, and asked him not to pay attention to the man. She then adds that she did something this time, when suddenly she is interrupted by Ryouridou. She asks the girl to come over to take a closer look at how she has grown up. When Ai-Fa approaches her, her grandmother admires how beautiful she has become, and informs her that she looks very much like her mother. This girl is covered with emotions, and she begins to cry with feelings. She admits that she feels guilty for not communicating with Ryouridou all this time, in response to which she asks her not to worry and begins to calm her down. She suggests that the girl talk slowly, since they have time. At this time, the hero exhales with relief, thinking that Ai-Fa's relationship with the Ryu family has improved at least a little, when suddenly a guy turns to him. He notices that it is getting late and offers him to stay overnight. After a while, Asuta goes outside and tells that he was told that there is one hut that is vacant. However, the difficulty lies in how to find it, because all the houses here are the same. Then he thinks that he did not come here in vain, because the day was fruitful, and wonders if Ai-Fa is feeling better and a little better. The hero understands that people have different tastes in food, and therefore it is quite understandable why some blessed him and others did not. Although, as a novice cook, he is ashamed, and what Donda meant by poison does not give him peace of mind. Suddenly, a rustle is heard from behind him, which greatly scares the hero. He is confronted by Vina, who asks what he is doing here. But, seeing that Asuta is not busy with anything, she suggests that he confide in her a little bit alone. The hero asks her again, and the girl admits that she can only talk about it with him. He remembers that her name is Ryouridou, and notices that she does not look like a bad person, which makes him begin to not understand why she had a conversation with him. Suddenly, she turns to Asuta and asks if he knows a way to escape from the forest and live in the world outside. He begins to guess what she is talking about, but turns away from her. Then she notices that she has already begun to keep secrets with him. Then Vina says that someday the time will come, though not right now, and asks not to forget about her then. After which, she says goodbye and leaves. The hero thinks about the world outside and realizes that she most likely did not mean his world, but was talking about some place in the middle of the forest. Suddenly, someone distracts him, and it turns out to be Ai-Fa. From this, Asuta immediately comes to her senses and concludes that she has already finished talking to her grandmother. She confirms his guesses and asks why he is standing here. The hero replies that these buildings are the same, and it is unclear which one to enter. But the girl says that he is talking some nonsense, and explains that since he was told to use a hut where there is no one, then he just needs to find one where the lights are off. Then the hero understands her train of thought and begins to feel like a fool. They decide to go, and the hero starts talking about the murder behind a closed door. But when Ai-Fa asks if he said anything, he says no. When Astawa wakes up, the girl immediately informs them that they are going home. She says that they have already received the blessings and is going to go hunting. Seeing that he continues to lie down, Ai-Fa turns to the hero, when suddenly he jumps up and asks how long he slept. But the girl notices that he doesn't look well, and asks if everything is fine. He replies that everything is fine and adds that he will sleep later. But Ai-Fa asks him not to bother, because this time she gave him trouble, and now she needs to thank him properly. The hero notices that today, for some reason, she looks very much like an angel who seems about to ascend to heaven. At the same moment, he plops down on the floor and the girl is scared for him. Asuta replies that everything is fine and that he just didn't get enough sleep. Of course, it bothered him that he stayed the night in someone else's house, but thanks to the fact that Ai-Fa behaved as usual, he calmed down. The hero recalls how he compared everything to the girl's house, while she already wanted to put out the lights. But then his thoughts were taken over again by what Dondaru said after the meal about the poison. The hero thinks about what the man meant by poison, because he used ordinary ingredients and the problem is clearly not in preferences. However, then Astawa wonders if it is necessary to continue to worry, because he has already fulfilled Ryouridou's wish, and Ai-Fa has one less problem. But has he done enough? Suddenly, the hero jumps up and realizes that he is not. He didn't do enough. Asuta realizes that he is the son of a cook and the keeper of the hearth in the house of Ai-Fa. However, on top of that, He also likes to cook. The hero loves the moment when someone enjoys his cooked food, as it was in his father's cafe. He thinks that there is no such dish that everyone will like. He knows that very well. However, when the hero's food is called poison, he cannot accept this. Then, he begins to actively think about how to please Donda. But, for long hours, nothing comes to his mind. The girl notices that he is most likely tired and suggests that he rest a little while. She goes and talks to Rue, with which the hero simply agrees. He understands that no matter how much you think about it, nothing can be resolved. Then the hero assumes that if he takes a walk, then maybe something will come to his mind. Outside, he hears men's voices coming from somewhere. Asuta assumes that these are just people who go hunting and thinks about the fact that yesterday he received the blessing mainly from women and not from men. However, he doesn't know how to ask them about it either. Suddenly, someone cheekily calls out to him. The hero is a little scared and recognizes in this man the boy who gave him a blessing yesterday, named Ryouridou. He anxiously asks about what happened and assumes that Asuta is looking for one of the women. The hero concludes that Ryouridou will be able to listen to him at least a little, but then begins to doubt it. He replies that he is just looking for some of the women, and the guy replies that they went to wash by the river. Astua falls into a stupor and asks him again, but he repeats once again that the girls went to wash by the river. From these words, the hero becomes somehow lost and does not answer anything. Then Ryouridou assumes that he does not know where this place is, and in this case decides to go and show him. But after that, the hero starts shouting that it is not necessary. At this time, it's like two people are fighting in him. One tells him not to be shy, and the other screams that it's impossible. He is terrified that he will be scalped and then his eyes will be gouged out, as promised by Ifa. The guy turns around and once again asks Asuta to follow him, in response to which he begins to shout that I will kill him, or else he will first know hell on earth, and then he will be killed. Then Ryouridou realizes that he's embarrassed and smiles after that. After a while, they come to the right place, where they begin to hear the sounds of splashing. Ryouridou explains that the girls wash behind those boards and asks that he can't decide in any way, since he has already come this far, and then pushes him. Asuta falls over the shore and realizes that this is the end. The girls see him and are greatly surprised by such an appearance, when they suddenly notice that he has lost consciousness. Suddenly, Ifa comes out from behind the boards, who once again says that she will not swim. But then she notices Asuta lying on the ground, and Reina informs her that he is not well. Then she asks the girls not to approach him, and decides to figure it out for herself. Reina starts to object, but still decides not to get involved. When the hero comes to his senses a little, she asks if he is okay, and Vina notices that Ifa is worried about his household. Suddenly, he begins to hear Ifa's voice, when suddenly she decides to bend down to check if he is alive and if his heart is beating, covering his face with her chest. Then she reports that there is a heartbeat, while Asuta does not understand what is happening. He thinks that he will die of suffocation with something soft, and that this death will be pleasant. But the hero begins to beg for salvation, and then the girl breaks away from him. She asks if he remembers her, after which the hero notices that she looks worse than usual and gets hit on the head. After that, they leave the shore, and the girl decides to apologize for hitting him on the head. The hero realizes that he could not hide his shock from what happened next. Apparently, the parental generation considered him a man, and Asuta's peers considered him a woman, because usually men are not the keeper of the hearth. Now he is not up to poison. The guys sit down under a tree, and the hero asks what Ifa wants for dinner tonight. The girl replies that she wants cutlets, but he says that she always asks for them. Then she tells him that the meat is usually softer in them, and he notices that she liked the dish because of its softness, which is why Ifa asks him to shut up. But at one point, he remembers the softness of her breasts again and is overcome with anxiety. The hero realizes that it turned out to be something different for these people and thanks Ifa. Then he turns to her and decides to ask for another chance. He wants to treat Donda again, who called his food poison, and for this he will need the help of a girl as the head of the house. Since she owes him for that time, Ifa decides to help him. She asks if there is a chance of success, and he replies that of course. After that, they go to Donda, and he asks what they came for. Then Ifa tells me that she has a request, She says that she would like the hero to prepare a treat for Ru's house. This makes the man grin and decide that he is being mocked. But the hero replies that he is absolutely serious. Then the man promises to show Asuta what happens when he confuses recklessness with courage and decides this time to prepare a scene for him in 3 days. Asuta and Ifa are sitting on the floor of the house. The latter turned to the main character and said that about that conversation with Donda, he conveyed that cooking was waiting for him in 3 days, and he would need to prepare food for the wedding celebration at the house of Ryouridou. The hero thought about her words and lowered his eyes. He only talked about the wedding out loud. The girl also looked away and just confirmed it. Ifa also explained that this time there will be not only routes, but also routines, which is why the conditions are more difficult than before. But the girl also warned him that the House of Ryouridou is also part of the Ryu Ponze. If they suddenly fail, then the entire Ryu clan will become their enemies, and the Fa house will become an outcast of the forest. Ifa, upset, said that then both she and he but did not finish the sentence. Asuta thought that the girl would get involved because of him, and despite this, she approved of his revenge. Then he got up from the floor and, clenching his hand into a fist, said decisively that they would certainly have to succeed. He smiled sweetly after his words, which made Ifa not even find what to say to him. Then she said that the main character had said that they had every chance of winning. After that, they simultaneously raised their fists in the air and hit each other with them. Asuta said that of course he would succeed, to which Ifa agreed with him. After a while, they set off on the road. Asuta had a bag over his shoulders. The girl was wearing a dark cape. They walked in silence. The main character was thinking that he was always looking for poison in the ingredients, which they might find unusual compared to all the previous food. He's right that his food was easy to chew. And anyway, looking away, he thought that since everything was exactly like that, he should be able to do it with these ingredients. His thoughts were interrupted by Ifa, who turned to him and said that they were about to come to Rua's house. To which Asuta said that he understood. The girl said that as he wanted, she asked Ryouridou to talk to the women so that they would help them. Before she could finish the sentence, the named one called out the main character by name. There were 4 other girls standing behind Ryouridou. She said that as he asked, she called the unoccupied women, so a lot of them came. Reincarnation said she thought it would be nice to help Asuta. Veritable asked what he needed help with at all. The main character smiled broadly at them all, patted Ryouridou's hair, and thanked them from the bottom of his heart. However, he continued to smile and said that he didn't need any help this time. To which Reina and Guilt were surprised, opening their mouths. At the same time, in the house of Ryouridou, the head of the family was telling his son that he was about to get married. He set the jug down on the table with a loud bang. The head smiled broadly and said that who would have thought that the Ryu house would arrange such a magnificent wedding? The jug was in front of him. Then the smile faded from his face and he asked Gazlan about what had happened. To which the latter replied that they had guests. They both turned around and saw that Asuta and Ifa were standing on the threshold of their house. Gazlan explained that it was about them that Donda was talking. The girl contacted him and said that, having received the recognition of the Ryu house, they had the honor to be in their house. She introduced herself and introduced the main character, saying that he was her household member. She said that they would help them with the preparations for the feast. The head of the family clenched his fists and agreed to her words, after which he turned to the girl and welcomed her into his house. After that, he punched in front of him and, glaring angrily, said that his beloved son was having a wedding, so let them not even think about spoiling it. Asuta stood there and could not find something to answer the words of the head. Gazlan turned to him and said that he was sincerely grateful to them for volunteering to help. His father was absolutely right. The son closed his eyes and said that not only they should enjoy this celebration, but everyone, because that's what he wants. Asuta thought about his last sentence. After leaving the house, Ifa turned to him and said that she only needed to prepare everything for dusk, when the wedding would begin. To which the main character said that he understood everything and would definitely prepare everything on time. The girl turned to him and, smiling, said that she was thinking that even though he had his own motivation, but just so he knew, she couldn't wait for his cooking. After a while, Asuta began training. There were 3 large pieces of meat on the table in front of him, each with a beautiful cut. There were 3 girls standing near the table, and each was carefully looking at the meat. Veritable asked him if he had brought 3 different meats. Reina asked if they would make a Hamburg out of it, to which the main character said no. This time, it's different. He stood in front of the table and, pointing to the meat, said that he would use all 3 pieces in different ways. To which Reina was surprised and asked that all 3 would go. Vina said it sounded interesting. After a while, Ifa and Asuta arrived at the wedding venue. In the center, a tall bonfire was surrounded by a fence. One of the heroes told them that this is the place of celebration. The main character enthusiastically said that this was a cool bonfire. How could they even make such a huge one? To which the girl said what he was talking about. Now the culprits of the celebration will appear. As if hearing her, the bride and groom, Gazlan Rutim and Amma Sheen, came up to them. The latter was a head shorter than the man with dark hair. Asuta looked at them and thought that Gazlan's father was not in sight. At this time, Ifa called out to him. Her face was somewhat tense, and she asked him why he was only looking at the bride, because it was rude. To which the main character only asked in surprise. Asuta realized that some kind of incomprehensible situation had happened again, and he might not be well, so he tried to justify himself. At that time, Gazlan's father Dan came up with Dondaru. The first one, seeing the table, smiled and said that he saw that everything was ready for the feast. The main character, seeing them, got a little nervous. The elders came to the table. In front of them were plates for food, cutlery, and, most importantly, hot dishes in pots. The head of Rutim suggested to start feasting. Fried meat was placed on the table in 3 plates, from which smoke was still coming, and there was an incredible aroma. At first, Dan Rutim smiled and said that the wedding should be celebrated smartly. But after he took a closer look at the table, the smile faded from his face. He became very upset and said that something didn't look quite right here. Dondaru just stood and surveyed the situation. The head began to ask loudly that it was really unclean meat that should be given to Munto, and they were comparing his son to Munto. While people were whispering about what had happened, he asked about who did it and who brought it here. Asuta pressed his hand to his chest and said in a firm tone that it was him. Danrutim looked at him and remembered that he was from the Fa house. He told the main character that he knew it was an important holiday, and did it anyway, asked if he really thought he could get away with it. But the latter interrupted him and asked him to try these dishes. Dan grabbed Asuta by his clothes and pulled him towards himself, while indignantly asking what he had just said. The latter said that the head was righteous in his anger. However, he prepared it by thinking about his son's words that everyone should enjoy. The head of Rujim let him go and asked if Gazlan had really said that. The latter said that yes, he talked about it. Then the father slapped his stomach. After that, he turned to the main character and said that if it turned out to be worse than what Munto was eating, then they would pay him in full right here. Ifa lowered her head and grabbed Amuta's sleeve, visibly nervous. The latter was standing, and his heart was beating violently. Dan asked them if they understood everything. The people from the Fa house. Reina wanted to speak out in defense of her friends, but Remy pulled her skirt and asked her not to do anything. At this time, the head grabbed 1 piece of meat and began to bring it to his mouth. He chewed it for a long time, and then took another piece and another piece, so that the plates in front of him were empty. Looking at him, the main character was very surprised that he ate all 3 pieces of meat in one sitting. At the same moment, Dan turned to him. A big smile lit up his face. He said that he really liked the 3rd version of meat, so he asked for more. Ifa and Asuta only thought that he had quickly changed his mind. The main character did not immediately comply with his request, because he was thinking, so Dan shouted for him to bring it to him faster, to which the latter said that he understood, and abruptly ran for meat. Donda turned to the head. He asked the latter if he was really telling the truth now, to which Dan looked at him in surprise and said yes. A new portion was placed in front of the head, and he smiled, turned to Donda and told him to try it himself, because it wouldn't take long. The latter just thought about it, and said that's how it was. Dan Rutim shouted to everyone that they were now returning to the fun. The people were delighted and immediately came closer to the campfire. Asuta turned to Reina with guilt and apologized to them for dragging them with him. The latter told him that there was nothing wrong with that and asked him to look away. The main character, along with Vina, turned around and saw that Ru's father seemed to be eating the meat he had cooked. Asuta was very surprised by what he saw in front of him. Dondaru, feeling that he was being watched, turned around, while continuing to chew a piece of meat. the main character froze in one place, holding a plate of hot food in each hand. He looked at Dongru and thought about the fact that he had touched his cooking. The latter, noticing that he was being watched, turned around and asked why this kid was looking at him. Asuta placed a plate of food in front of him, after which he said that this time he was just silently eating his cooking. To which Dongru looked at him in surprise and asked him with displeasure. Asuta immediately felt goosebumps all over his body from his look and voice. He turned around and said over his shoulder that he hadn't said anything, apologized for interrupting his meal. To which Papa Ru said that it was because his food was not poison. The main character turned over his shoulder, as he did not understand what he said. Donda explained that because this time, his meat is not poison. Asuta's cheeks turned red and her eyes opened wide in embarrassment after such words addressed to her. He thought again that his meat was not poison. He turned completely to Dongru and wanted to ask him a question, but then Rimi called out to him and asked if she needed to bring something. Papa Ru explained with the most serious look that he is a hunter and he hunts jeeb, and that's how he lives. And of course he has to worry not only about himself, but also to protect those who cannot hunt. And for this he needs to keep his teeth capable of chewing. And if he continues to chew, then the soft meat cooked by the hero will turn into poison, and the teeth will weaken like jibbas. He thought that the meat that Asuta had cooked this time was able to strengthen his body, and that was the only reason. The main character got a little excited by his words and wanted to explain about the meat cooked this time. But Rimi called out to him. She quickly approached him and told him to listen to her, but he smiled sweetly, held out his hand in front of him, and, apologizing, asked her to wait a little bit. After that, he turned back to Donda and said that he had only brought meat today. He explained what the 3 types of meat that were on the table today were: hard legs, soft thighs, and medium hard meat between the shoulder blades. He can't chew the dried meat served at Fa's house for breakfast, but hunters who are used to such food will like legs. On the contrary, Rimiru, for example, likes thighs or meat between the shoulder blades more. Dongru interrupted his words and, looking him straight in the eyes, asked him why he was doing this. Because food was only to support the body. Asuta explained that there is no special reason. He is a cook. And when many different people gather together and eat, he wants everyone to like it as much as possible. Papa Rubu chuckled and said that he understood what his pride was. He gave him a blessing for this feast and clarified that it was only for him, after which he handed him a part of the necklace. The main character accepted it and was embarrassed. Rimiru immediately ran into him from behind and knocked him down. She told him not to forget about her. They began to fall together. Venus said that she was so bold she was entrusted to be the keeper of the hearth, so that's how she cheered up. Rimi, not listening to her, asked Asuta if she needed to continue frying meat, or she could eat it, because she was trying so hard. Reina asked if he was okay. Dongru, looking at the picture unfolding in front of him with incomprehension in his eyes, asked them what it all meant. Asuta, lifting his head off the floor, said that this time he only brought meat and offered the women from the Ru house his ideas. The keepers of the hearth were his daughters. They asked if he hadn't noticed, and Rimi, holding up her hand, said that she had tried. The main character explained that he thinks it will be served in the Ru family for dinner. He got up from the floor, dusted himself off, and continued his speech. He believes that when Jibba Ru, then he saw the face of the eldest woman from the family, and also Rudo Ru. An image of this funny man immediately appeared in his head, who was eating food with great appetite. And the elderly and children, men and women, all enjoy dinner together. This is the most important time for the family. Dongru lowered his eyes and thought about his words. Aloud, he turned to the main character and said about the family. Then Dan Rutum came up to him from behind. His arms were crossed over his stomach. Smiling, he told him not to make such a sour face. Asuta was startled again and, turning to Rimi, asked her if there was any more meat, to which the latter replied that there was no more supplement, which is why she tried to ask him a question. Several sweats came off the main character before he told Dan Rutum that there was no more meat, to which the latter asked if he was just talking about meat or something. Asuta replied in the negative, but he thought to himself that he thought he would ask. The head of the Rutum family turned around to return to the place of celebration, and then turned to the heroes and told them to go to feast, to which Asuta replied positively. After that, Dan Rutum turned to Dongru, and with a grin, and said that he had a conversation with him. to which the latter asked about what kind of conversation it was. After a while, Asuta and Ifa were sitting on the ground and eating. The main character said that the night has come, the sky is so high, to which the girl agreed with him. The hero asked her if she was offended by him for something, to which she replied in the negative. Then he asked if she was angry because Giberg wasn't there this time. She answered in the negative again. Ifa said that at this feast, she felt very little pride for Asuta, but for herself, annoyance. Upon hearing these words, the main character turned around, his mouth open in surprise and his eyes open wide. He didn't even know what to say to that. Nevertheless, when he gathered himself, he asked what he understood about pride, but why she felt annoyed, to which she said that she could not be there. She was the head of the house, but at the same time burdened him, the keeper of the hearth. Then Asuta realized that the reason was that she did not want to strain him and relaxed somewhat. He held out his hand to the girl and, addressing her by name, told her to listen to him. She was sitting with her eyes averted from him, and she looked sad. He got to his feet, smiled, and, continuing to hold out his hand to her, said that there was no such thing today that he had done alone. It is precisely because Ifa has linked fate with him that he is here. The girl held out her hand in response and agreed with him. They both threw their hands up. Ifa told him to keep working hard, calling him the keeper of the hearth. To which the main character said that he would do everything, calling her the mistress of the head of the family. Gazlan, looking at them in surprise, asked his father what they were doing there. Dangutim, also looking at the heroes, said that who knows them. Happy Ifa and Asuta, without lowering their hands, with smiles on their faces, began to argue whose hand was higher. The father told Gazlan that maybe he would ask another time, to which the latter smiled sweetly so that his eyes even closed and agreed. His fiancée said she would look forward to it. After a while, Ifa and Asuta returned to the house. The girl knelt down in front of him and said that she would like to thank him for his efforts, and she asked him what he would like. The main character stood up and staggered towards her. He tried to formulate his wish by repeating the word "then" several times. After that, he fell on his stomach to the floor and said that he would like this soft fur rug, to which the head of the Fa said that she understood that he liked him. But this is the property of the Rue house, and they do not have the means to buy one. Asuta blushed and turned to her, saying that he was joking. Ifa said that's why she says she knows it's impossible. He rolled onto his back and started talking about his serious desire. The girl interrupted him and said that it was necessary from the very beginning. But he didn't listen to her and asked if she had seen Rue's pantry. He said that if we talk about values, then they have these blessings, and then asked if they could be exchanged for something, to which Ifa said that they had almost no fruit wine left. Asuta asked where they bought it. The girl said that a lot of what he had seen in Rue's pantry had been exchanged for Gibba's fangs, and turned the conversation to the topic of his reward. He looked at her with a question in his eyes. She smiled and said that tomorrow they would go shopping in the roadside town of Genos, to which he asked in surprise that they would go to the city and not to the village. At Ifa's suggestion, they went to the city. The main character was very worried. The way there passed through a suspension bridge, which, moreover, creaked when moving. He asked if there was another way into the city, to which the girl smiled condescendingly at him and said that there was no other way. Asuta thought to himself that this was cruel, but then he decided that the new path gives freshness to the road, and these distances heal the heart. Besides, Ifa turned to him and said that they had already come to the city and told him to take a look. She told him it was Genos. He exclaimed admiringly. In front of his eyes were the streets of the city, fruit stalls, large animals, many people. He thought about the fact that people around him were wearing hoods. In that case, was he dressed normally by their standards? Then he saw a shop and went to it to see what they were selling there. Suddenly a woman walked past him. She was not smiling, rather. She even felt some discomfort. He turned to look at her. Ifa asked him what was the matter, to which he said that everything was fine. It was just that this place was very different from the forest. The girl agreed with him and said that people from other countries periodically come to trade, to which he was surprised. Looking around, he wondered if he was imagining it, as if everyone was avoiding them. He felt uncomfortable. Ifa told him that they would go first to exchange the fangs for money, to which the main character replied that he understood. They came to the man for the purpose of an exchange. He turned away from them and somewhere to the side, without looking at them, said that if they needed to change the fangs of the jibe, then they had to wait. The main character, looking at him, made a displeased face and thought that this man was some kind of bad person. He tried to contact Ife, but she, having received the coins, said that now they had something to buy. He agreed with her, but thought to himself about how fast he was. He said they would buy a lot, to which she apologized and said she didn't have much. Then they bought the necessary things and products that he wanted. They approached different shops, and the sellers were very nervous when they saw them. But Ifa didn't pay any attention to them, enjoying her shopping. In the end, the girl, holding a large bag in her hands, said that she had bought everything. Asuta, standing next to him, also holding a bag over his shoulders, said that they had bought so much. She said she had some more coins left and asked if she needed to buy anything else. The main character agreed and, seeing another shop, exclaimed. When he saw that they were manta rays, he asked if they really sold food there and offered to buy it before going home. He said he wanted to eat something he hadn't cooked. She said she wasn't a fan of sweets, but she could buy them. Ifa smiled broadly, closing her eyes, and told him that it was fine, they could buy food, to which he happily thanked her. He came up, still holding the bag behind his back, and looking at the food, politely asked the seller for 2 pieces of manta rays. The man first smiled at him and said that now he would give them everything, and then, realizing who was standing in front of him, he called them jibbagers. Then he said that he understood their order. They needed 2 mantas from Kimusa. I asked them to leave the money on the board. Asuta was surprised to think about the word gibajors. Ifa took the manta rays from the seller, kept one of them for herself, and handed the other to the main character, and told him to hold his manta ray. He took another hot meal in his hand. His lips began to tremble as if he was about to cry. The girl asked him why he was so sad. The main character said that everything was fine. He just didn't understand something. To which she asked him what it was. Maybe he didn't like Kimusa meat. After that, she bit into a piece of manta ray and asked if it really seemed strange to him that Jibajor was eating Kimusa meat. The people of the forest region, who hunt the wild beast, Giba, and earn coins from hunting it, they consider savages, because they are very far from such a thing as hunting, despite the fact that they protect these people with this hunt. But the latter do not think so, but are only wary of the Jibajors. After her story, she turned to Asuta. She asked the main character if he liked these people or if it seemed to her. He was surprised by her question, finished his mant and said that no, he did not like them. Ifal smiled at him and said that she couldn't stand the residents of the stone capital either, and it was mutual. They're tired of talking about their money. They walked slowly towards the house. The girl asked him how mantas from Kimusa tasted to him, to which he swallowed. After that, he turned his hand into a fist and said decisively that his cooking was much better than this food. Ifa turned to look at him and admired his spirit. The girl said that she thought so too, but did not have time to finish, because at that time there was some noise behind them, and the man shouted at someone asking what was wrong with that person. Asuta turned around and saw that this man was the first Diga-san he had met in the forest. The latter put his foot in front of him and, bending over the girl, told her to look at her feet. People began to crowd around them. Someone asked him if he knew that you can't swear here. The other one said to call the guards. The girl lying on the floor was trying to justify herself to him. Ifa, after looking at what was happening, said that she was also young and inexperienced, and generally responds to evil with evil. Therefore, she jumped up to one of the shops, grabbed a long tool and, apologizing to the owner, said that she would borrow it. Asuta tried to call her by name, but she didn't even turn around and said that their purchases were still on it. After which, she headed towards Digisun. She called out to the latter and swung the instrument in front of him. Her whole appearance showed a serious attitude. The impact caused her cape to fly apart behind her back. She told the man that he was bothering her eyes. The end of the instrument was a small hook that was located right next to Digisong's body. He froze and then asked her what she was doing. She replied that if he didn't want to get hurt, then let him disappear. More and more people gathered around them. Asuta was very nervous about Ai-Fi. Suddenly, a man behind him, whose head was hidden by a hood, said that this was a cool woman. Then one of the guards came running and shouted, asking what they were doing here. One of the eyewitnesses said that the guards had finally appeared. Diga-san, realizing that he could ask for help, turned to the man and asking to save him, said that Ifa attacked him for no reason. The latter stood quietly, only narrowing her eyes. Asuta was loudly indignant at this. The guard looked at them, chuckled, and realized that the Prilesians were standing in front of him. The girl also looked at him in response. The man turned to Ifi and said that he had a conversation with her, so let her follow him. The latter gave the tool to the owner. He said that he had seen everything from the beginning to the end. Asuta was trying to say that it wasn't her fault. An unknown man with shoulder-length blonde hair approached them. He had a big smile on his face. He said that at first, Diga-san bumped into the girl, and when he was about to offend her for not apologizing, Ifa subdued him. The girl confirmed it. The guard, after listening to this, concluded that there was no fight. After that, he turned to the passers-by and told them to disperse. The shopkeeper did not take the instrument himself, so Ifa came over and put it down herself, saying that she had returned it. He only exclaimed in fright. Asuta called out to her. The latter ran up to her and asked about the man who stood up for them. She said that yes, he needed to be thanked. Then this man abruptly appeared in front of them, still smiling. He said that he didn't need to be thanked. Asuta was very surprised when he managed to approach. Ifa, looking at him, tried to deny it. But he said that he needed to hurry, as he still had things to do. He raised his right arm and left leg up, as if he was preparing to run, and still smiling broadly, thanked him for the interesting sight. Then he turned around and left them. It felt like the air was glowing around him. Ifa and Asuta looked after him with incomprehension. The girl just grinned and said that he gracefully said goodbye to them. After a while, they headed home. The girl turned to the main character and said that he seemed to be very tired today. The latter was very tired. He said that it was all because the suspension bridge was very shaky. Ifa overtook him a little and suggested that they cook dinner faster and then rest. As she approached the house, she noticed that someone was standing near it. He asked if they had visitors. Gazlan, Rutim, and Asut were standing near the house. He said that they were waiting for them, and then added that he had a request to the Fa house. Gazlan and Asut continued to stand outside their house. Ifa and the main character stood still without taking a step. The latter only asked in surprise. He clarified whether they were newlyweds from the house of Rutim, but no one answered him. The girl asked them what their business was. The man said they came with a request. Together they entered the house and sat down on the floor opposite each other. Gazlan said they were very impressed with their cooking at the wedding feast. He closed his eyes and said that he really asked them to be the keepers of the hearth at the wedding itself too. Asuta became nervous and thought that they were really asking him to do this. Gazlan explained that it is expected that there will be about 100 people at this feast, and apologized for asking them so suddenly. He asked them if they agreed with his proposal. The main character grabbed his trousers and squeezed them. He was nervous. Asuta thought to himself that, it turns out, they recognized him as a cook. Ifa looked at him. He said that of course he was very happy, but whether he should participate in such an important ceremony, he had never cooked for hundreds of people before, but he asked them if he could have a few days to prepare. He also said that he wanted to see if he could fully meet their expectations. Find out from what and where to cook. Gazlan and Asut exchanged glances, after which they said that they hoped that he would agree to their proposal, after which they said goodbye to them. Asuta stood on the threshold of the house and watched the guests walk away from them. He thought about what he had told them, but how big the kitchen was, how much food he needed, and he would probably need helpers. Ifa called them. She told him very quietly that she was very proud of him. There was silence around, but the main character still asked her if she had said something, and then apologized to her and explained that he had not heard anything. Ifa turned to him and said that he was pulling too much on himself alone. She asked if he had thought about asking her to help him more often. Asuta said that she was kind of evil, and in general, she also often tries to pull everything on herself. She was indignant and asked when she tried to do it. He replied to her that, for example, now, and it seems to him that this is not what she is trying to tell him. The main character smiled and said that he is where he is now, thanks to her. She accepted him, knowing nothing and not understanding anything. Ifa was embarrassed at his words, and her cheeks turned red. In order not to show her embarrassment, she turned away and said that he had achieved recognition on his own. He apologized again and told her that he hadn't heard her. She replied that people see more value in his cooking than he does. Her face became serious. She put her hand in front of her and told the main character to believe in himself. Asuta turned to her, looked at her, then smiled and thanked her. She looked into his eyes in response. After a while, they settled down on the floor of the house to think about the upcoming feast. The main character said that when you cook for 100 people, it's better to have a list where it says how much and what you need. There are just all sorts of things from the market. He held up the first product in front of him and asked the girl if it would go well. She replied that she did not know. Then he showed her another product and she replied again that she did not know. When he was going to show another one, she said in advance that she did not know. When he was going to show another one, she said in advance that she did not know. The main character remembered that Ifa had never known what was delicious, at least at the time of their first meeting. But then he remembered that Ryouridou had told him then that his food was delicious, and she knew what it was. He said out loud that Reincarnation had said that in the pantry too. He abruptly jumped to his feet, clenched his hand into a fist, and said decisively that the answer to his question was definitely in the Rue house. Ifa calmly agreed with him and said that in their situation, they could only rely on the Rue house. He thought to himself that he was even ashamed that she had agreed with him so easily. The girl said that she would go to ask for permission to visit, and he also wanted to go with her. To which the main character replied that what would he do without the mistress of the head of the family? After a while, they came to the Rue family's house. Reina met them and asked them why they had come to talk about holding a wedding at their home. She explained that her father had told her everything. She asked Asuta if he would be the keeper of the Harem on her. Ifa and the main character stood in front of her and looked at her. The girl was thinking about permission, but he was nervous and said that he was still thinking. Asuta told Reina that since the feast would be held at their place, then he would cook at their place. She agreed with him. Then he asked that he remembered that they had 4 fireplaces and whether they would be enough to cook for 100 people. He explained that for 100 people, 4 kettles will be needed for jiba, poitan, and aria soup, and fried meat. He thought about the fact that with the help of only one dish, he would most likely be able to cook for 100 people. That's why I turned to Reina. Asuta thought that this was an important holiday. He asked if she remembered when they were in the pantry. She advised him to buy groceries, to which she said that he had a good memory. The main character explained that he had a request about this. He wanted to ask the women about their house. He burst into the room where the women of the Rue family were and said that he would like to ask the ladies who have experience in storing the hearth what products they often use and how they prefer to use them. Remy and Vina looked at him. The first called his name and the second did not understand his question, asking him again. Ifa whispered to him that if they even told him how to use them, then what was the point of those two ordering a feast? To which he replied that he was thinking of cooking. There's not much time this time, so he's looking for clues. Asuta thought that they would hardly understand him if he told them that he did not understand the products of their world. Reina came to his aid and asked if they could help him, since they were preparing for him anyway. He joined in her words and asked for them. One girl said that since Reina was asking her, she would help. The girl introduced herself that her name was Guido. She did not know much about cooking, but most of all, she liked vegetables. Remy added that she likes to add chak to the pot. It's lush and delicious with it. Rina joined the conversation and said that she likes a kind of tino wood. Looks like leaves, you cook with it, and everything is so soft at once. Then Asuta asked Reina what she liked and explained that he had heard she had some spices, but now he would be happy with any product. She understood him and, picking up the object, said that she preferred tarapa. When he saw it, he remembered that they had bought one in the city. It somewhat resembles a large grain. Reina held it with one hand and said that it could be fresh, but if boiled, it was sweet and a little sour. She liked it. He thought about it and came to the conclusion that this product is somewhat similar to a tomato. Together with Foy and Reina, they went to the drawers in the pantry. Asuta asked if he could walk around and look around, to which she replied that she would go and ask her father if they could borrow more hearths. The girls of the Rue family said that they can prepare vegetables that can be bought in the city, but they cannot help with the mushrooms, since they are not hunters. He told them that he understood everything. Asuta went outside with Foy. Looking at him, he said that the sun was setting. The men should return soon, he would talk to them himself, to which the girl asked about herself. She said she could hunt, asked if he needed help. Then Reina came out into the street and said that it seemed like the men had returned. The latter were standing in a crowd near the house. They looked rather worried. They were talking about something. The heroes decided that something was wrong. Asuta asked why the smell of iron was so strong. Ifa joined him and said that besides the beast, she could feel human blood. The main character saw a man who had blonde hair. His whole body was covered in blood. He looked at this picture in shock and thought about human blood. Asuta watched and did not understand what was happening. The men said they would take the wounded man inside, agreed with them and told them to put him under a tree. After looking at it, the main character found out that it was Ryouridou. He thought about the state he was in. There was blood on his head. He was sitting under a tree with his eyes closed and moaning. Ifa put her hand on Asuta's shoulder and said that everything would be fine. Then a guy with long black hair ran up to the victim. He started calling his name and asked if he was conscious. Ryouridou opened his eyes and turned to Shinru. At first he closed his eyes, as if he had lost consciousness again, and then he abruptly opened them, and as if he did not understand what had happened. Ryouridou abruptly sat down on his knees and said that he had only hit his head a little. He was fine. After which he asked what was wrong with Shinru's father. The latter replied that his father would no longer be able to be a hunter. He had not really regained consciousness yet. They say that Jiba crippled him. Ryouridou started talking about what would happen for this reason, but Shin himself said that his house would cease to exist in such a way. He is now the only one in the whole family who can hunt and cannot support 5 people, after which he apologized to him for telling him all this. Asuta, after listening to all this, asked if these people had failed in the hunt, to which Ifa said that this time, it seemed, they had managed only with the wounded. Here the main character thought about the fact that the girl was hunting Jiba alone all this time. He only thought before that she just went hunting, returned from it and got used to it a long time ago. But how she always came back unscathed alone. He turned to the girl and wanted to talk to her about the way of hunting. But then a guy addressed her by name. He recognized him as the one who had recently talked to Ryouridou. They looked at each other. After that, Shinru turned to Ife and asked that she was hunting alone all the time, to which the girl agreed and asked what was the matter. He looked at her very seriously and asked her to teach him sacrificial hunting. They both stood and looked into each other's eyes. After listening to him, both Ifa and the main character thought about sacrificial hunting. She said that she did not know such a person and asked if Tom needed to take care of the wounded man now, to which Shin began to get nervous and say that she was hunting alone, so she should understand. He will have to protect his family alone. At that time, Asuta was only thinking about what sacrificial hunting was. Ifa, calmly looking at the guy, said that then he shouldn't talk in vain right now. Shinru shuddered, not expecting such words from her, then turned around and walked away. The girl didn't even look at him. The main character, seeing this, thought that the girl was severely rejecting him, almost like when they first met. Ifa asked him that today they would not talk to them about how to prepare for the holiday. Tomorrow they would settle it, to which he said that not really. At this time he was thinking that after all this sacrificial hunt does not fly out of his head. Then he saw that the wounded Ryouridou was walking somewhere. He wondered where he was going alone. After that, he turned to the girl and, apologizing, said that he would follow him, asked her to wait for him here. She agreed. Asuta approached the guy and, putting his hand on his shoulders for support, asked why he was bleeding and how his condition was in general. He was surprised and called him by name. He said he only hit his head a little. It wasn't his blood. Ryouridou said he was going to wash by the water, so he asked him to take him away. The main character laughed and said that last time he drove it. Now the opposite is true. The guy was surprised that he remembered it. They reached the reservoir. Ryouridou washed his face, then began to turn his head in different directions to dry his hair and facial skin. He said that he felt refreshed now, so he would be able to walk home himself and thank the main character. Asuta said it was nothing. He thought that while Ife was not around, he might ask something. The main character turned to Ryouridou and asked in a whisper if he knew such a way of hunting as sacrificial hunting, to which the latter looked at him in shock, and then asked him again. Ryouridou told him not to run away, and then asked what he was going to do when he found out, to which Asuta waved off and said that it was not for him. Then the guy realized. He asked the main character about what Shinru really said about it, to which he lowered his eyes to the floor and did not know what to answer. Then he asked if the head of the Fa house did not know this very well, and then told him that those who hunt like this collect sweet smells that attract jibe. Asuta remembered that it was that sweet smell when they first met. Ryouridou said that, however, it was just a guess, to which the main character emotionally asked him to tell. He explained that Ifa stubbornly denied everything, said that she did not know anything, and she talked to Shinru so that he would get rid of her as soon as possible. Ryouridou explained that he himself did not really know about sacrificial hunting. It was a very old way. The hunter purposely catches the smells that attract jiba, becomes a Primarch himself, and lures such an excited Shiba to himself. That's such a hunt. The main character looked away and, visibly nervous, said that it was dangerous, to which Ryouridou said not to misunderstand him. They, the hunters, hunt with pride to protect their families. Therefore, he asked not to worry about the hunter who is trying to protect his family. Be proud of him, even if he uses sacrificial hunting. He immediately remembered Dondaru's words that women cannot hunt, so they are given amulets, that soft meat is poison for him, and remembered that all this is done for the sake of the family. After that, he remembered that Gazlan and his fiancée, Asuta, had actually asked him for help. He apologized to Ryouridou and told him that he had run, asked him to try to walk himself, to which he replied that he had said that he was fine. Asuta abruptly ran, thinking that now he understood the meaning of hunting. The main character ran to Ifa. She called his name and asked him what had happened that he had been walking for so long. But he walked past her and, thanking her for trying not to upset him, said he would go and talk to the men. The girl just turned to look at him and looked after him with incomprehension in her eyes. He was thinking that men should be in this hut. Opening the door, he went inside, pausing at the threshold. The head of the Dondaru family turned to him, but he did not understand what was happening. He asked the main character why he came to them without asking. They were treating the wounded here, to which he simply turned to them. After that, he fell on his knees in front of them and said that he knew that in such a difficult time he should not make a request, but nevertheless, he would voice it. Donda said that since he understood everything, he should leave the house quickly, but he bowed low and, without letting him finish, asked if they could give him 30 heads of giba for the wedding feast of Gazlan Rutim and his bride. Everyone was silent, and he thought that he had been refused. He raised his head and saw that Shinru was looking at him with reproach in his eyes. Asuta thought that it was written on his face that a family member had been injured, and he talked about it. But there was nothing surprising. Then someone took Shin by the edge of his cape and pulled him towards himself. The latter felt it and turned around. He saw that it was his father. The man's entire head and half of his face were bandaged. He smiled and said that hunting for others is the pride of a hunter. Even if one day he will not be able to hunt, let his son not give up this pride. Shin called him in surprise. The latter exhaled and said that if he was going to hunt, he would need help for the wedding feast of Rutim. All the men in the house started whispering, calling his name and saying that he was in trouble. Dondaru said it was decided. He continued and said that the men of the Ru house promised to prepare the necessary number of carcasses of jiba. Asuta abruptly jumped to his feet and, smiling, began to thank them. He thought that he felt that now he understood the meaning of what the people of Prysia consider the most important, and this is their family bond. He announced that he would arrange a magnificent wedding feast, and I thought to myself that, among other things, for the sake of those who chose him. At this time, Shin put his hand in his father's hand. A few days have passed. Asuta asked the men if they had finished draining the blood and butchering the carcass, to which they said they had done as he asked. It was simple. Ru men caught 30 jib. There was, however, one person who objected to such procedures. But all this was resolved with a few words. It was Dondaru. He said that if there is someone in his family who likes it, then he does not mind. Asuta put a large deep dish on the table and said that all that remained was for the women to bring vegetables. At that time, Remy came running to him, who called his name, and then smiled and told him to look. She turned and pointed with her hands at the women behind her. She said they went to the city to get his groceries. The girl stood holding bags of groceries in her hands and turned to the girl to help them. He put the purchased products in the dishes and thought that there were about 100 people here, so it was just great. Asuta turned to the girls and asked them very much to help him in time for the feast. Remy approached him and said that she had not used parada before, asked him what he was going to do with so much, to which he replied that he had just come up with a new menu. Ifa intruded into their conversation and asked what was going on, if the men were talking about something there. At this time, Asuta saw that Ifa was looking at something carefully. He asked her what had happened, to which she said, without turning around, that the people of the songhouse were there. I asked them what they were doing here. Upon hearing the name, the main character thought about it and remembered a not very pleasant man who was holding a jug with a drink in his hands. He immediately went up to Ifei and asked if these were the same people. They were not invited here, so why did they come here, really, to fight? To which she said she didn't know. She was going to go and take a look and asked him to stay put. He looked after her with incomprehension. The men threw the carcass of the animal on the floor. They said that they had brought a congratulatory gift to the Ryu family, to which Dondaru asked them again. He looked towards the gift and asked with anger in his voice if they really called it a gift. Digasun said that there was an urgent conversation, so they couldn't prepare the gift any better. To which Papa Ryu said that no one had invited them here. He pointed at the animal and told them to get rid of this gift, since this abomination cannot be left here. Then Donda looked aggressively at the guests and told him to be kind and go back where they came from before his anger reached its limit. Diga was surprised by his words and asked if the Ryu were opposed to their house, to which Papa Ryu replied that they just want to calmly continue preparing for the wedding, and they are in their way. The two families stood in front of each other, while the Song family was very relaxed, even smiling, while the Ryu family was very unhappy. Ifa came out and wanted to go and find out what happened, but Asuta beat her to it. The main character came forward and, without looking back, walked past the girl towards the men talking to each other. He heard Digasong smirking and saying that it was all because they were having a feast and they hadn't even bothered to invite them. To which Asuta turned to him and asked if they really wanted to ruin everything here. The latter turned around and looked at him questioningly. The main character asked if he did it, to which he asked what would happen if it was him, and in general, who he was. It seems he had seen him somewhere. Asuta came close to him and, grabbing him by the clothes, asked if they understood what they had done, and they were also called Pralesians. Digasun told him to shut up, after which he hit him in the face with all his might, from which the main character flew to the side. He crashed into an overturned table and landed right on the ground. Asuta thought about the fact that the representatives of the Song family had knocked down the meat that the Ryu man had tried so hard to divide for the feast. He got up and walked back to the men on shaky legs. The main character grabbed Diga's clothes again. With anger in his eyes, he looked at him and told him to apologize to the Ryu family, to which Asuta was hit again, only now in the stomach. The latter began to fall to the ground. Ifa called out his name and started running towards him to soften the fall. But then Dondaru held him by the shoulders. The main character looked at him questioningly, but Dad, without taking his eyes off, was looking at the Song family. He pushed Asuta aside and told him to step back. The latter continued to be surprised by the actions of the head of the family. Diga-san said that this main character is not a good person, and he is the one who should apologize. To which Dondaru said that he was a guest at their family's house, to which Diga was indignant and said that then he should apologize all the more. But the head of the Song family addressed him by name, thus stopping him. After that, he said that if he continued to bother him with his rudeness, he would take it as a declaration of war against the House of Ryu, and then asked if he understood. Diga's Song was scared by his words. The second man called his name questioningly. Diga turned around and told Mid to follow him and take the jiba he had brought with him, to which the latter began to resent, saying that he had carried her here so much. Mida slung the carcass over his shoulders and followed Diga-san. The latter was very angry. At the same time, Ifa turned around and ran towards Asuta. She ran home and saw that he was fine. He was already doing the dishes. He handed one of the family members the product on a piece of cloth and said that it needed to be cut off a little and it would be fine, to which he was asked if it would come out a little. And it would be fine, to which he was asked if it would come out a little. Ifa looked at it in shock. Someone asked Asuta what to do with this product, to which he said that everything was fine, ready to use. The main character smiled and said that if there was a shortage, they would slightly change the dish. He would come up with something. He will not let their efforts to make a wonderful feast go to waste. While Ifa was looking at Asuta, Dondaru called out to her. He said about her hearthkeeper, to which she asked what happened. He expressed the opinion that perhaps he had injured himself somewhere. The girl began to get very nervous. She asked Donda if he really felt something when he caught him, to which he replied that either because of his leg or because of his bruised back, his axis was shifted. He offered to look at him from behind. Ifa was upset and said it was her fault, but Donda began to deny her guilt and said that if Diga-sun had seen her, then everything would have become even worse, since she had been at odds with Tsunami for a long time. It was good that she did not come up. He continued that Asuta is simply not one of their people, understands what a wedding means to them, what is needed from him, and did not stay away. He thinks that one day he will become a good keeper of the hearth. Ifa looked at the main character and apologized to him for coming to her senses late, asked if she could help in any way, to which he replied that she could clean up the hair of the jiba here. There were vegetables on the table in front of them. Asuta turned to the girls and said that they were starting to cook. This time, he wants to cook a new dish with them. They listened to him attentively. He said that before that they had always cooked jiba soup with poiton, but now they would add lightly toasted vegetables and reduce the fried meat. And, picking up the tarapa, he smiled and said that he wanted to make a new soup with this vegetable, to which Reina asked him again with anticipation, and Guido said that her face was shining with happiness. Preparations for the feast are slowly progressing. A grass-colored tower made of logs is being erected. The wedding feast begins. A plate of hot soup was placed on the table. Asuta told him to see the dish of the new wedding menu, to which Vinaru asked if this red soup was made from jiba, to which Reina sniffed and said that this smell reminded her of something. She was delighted and assumed that the main ingredient of the soup was tarapa, to which he smiled and said that she had hit the nail on the head. He immediately remembered how she had talked about the taste of the vegetable, and when he heard it from Reina, he realized that tarapa was something like a cabbage-shaped tomato. He mashed it, and the remaining fruits turned out to be a good tomato soup. It's a wedding, so the dishes should be colorful. Indeed, some of the dishes on the table were white, some were brown. The main character offered to show the guests their dishes, to which they agreed. He was setting the table when Dan Rutum said he was waiting for his roast meat. Therefore, he said that he would bring him more. He handed the plate to Jibaru and said it was tarap soup. He hoped she would like it, to which she said that even her teeth could handle tarapa. Ifa called out to him and said it was starting. Asuta turned around and saw Gazlan with his bride. They were wearing beautiful white robes that were breathtaking. He thought it was illuminated by the light of the sunset and the light of the campfire, and said out loud that it was a magical sight. He had never even seen such a picture in Japan. There is something mystical about it. Asuta pouted, crossed his arms over his chest, and apologized to his dad and friends for what seemed to be a small benefit in his death. Ifa asked what he was carrying at all, after which she pointed her finger and told him to look at it. Lili stood not far from the fire, forming a semicircle. She said that the ceremony would end soon and they would walk in front of them again. The main character stood with his eyes wide open and looked at the bride and groom passing by. They smiled at him very sweetly, to which he did the same in response. He thought it would be enough for him if everyone just liked his banquet. Then Ifa pulled him out of his thoughts. He got scared. She said the feast had already begun, so he needed to go, to which he asked if she would go. The girl looked at him seriously and then said that she needed to change her clothes, so let him go alone. He looked at her blankly and asked again. He thought to himself about what it meant that she needed to change her clothes. She became embarrassed and started shouting at him to go to the feast faster, to which he became nervous, agreed with her, and then turned around to go. He looked around and, surprised, realized that he had not seen any other women. Dan Rutum called him by name. The latter held out a plate and told Asuta to add meat to it, to which, as he took the plate, he thought that this was how he imagined it. Then I asked him how many pieces of meat to bring him, but the man interrupted and thanked him. The head of the Rutan family looked around and said that he had arranged such a gorgeous feast. Everyone was sitting around happy and eating the food prepared by the main character. The latter agreed with his words. After that, he said that he believed that he had arranged such a gorgeous feast thanks to the help of other people. Dan Rutum smiled at him, grunted and agreed, after which he said that then he would have 5 pieces of meat. Asuta fried the meat, put it on a plate, and said that there were 5 pieces. Suddenly a girl walked past him. He wondered if she looked familiar. He froze with a plate in his hands, called Ai Fu by name, and asked what happened. Because her hairstyle is unusual, she was wearing a suit that covered everything she needed and was decorated with flowers. Her hair was loose, and flowers were also woven into it. She asked what happened. Is it really a problem that she let her hair down? He looked at her again, his mouth, like his eyes, wide open from what he saw. He blushed. And then he said that there was no problem, thinking to himself that there was a problem, and it was in her outfit. Ifa looked at his plate and asked if his meat would get cold. He caught himself and said that it was true, after which he turned around and quickly ran away. Asuta thought that she usually looked great, and in such an outfit she was also beautiful, but in a different sense. He went up to Dan Rutim and said that he had brought meat. He thanked him. Then he asked him why women were like that, to which he was told that it was a privilege for women to dress up like this at a feast. Well, men are a delight to the eyes. Asuta turned to Dan and asked about the delight, to which he confirmed it. He explained that it is very important for their people, that the newlyweds create a new family. It is already a joy to participate in such an event, and I told him to have fun. There were a lot of people around the campfire. Everyone sat in groups and ate the food prepared by the main character. Dan explained that this was their wedding. In the morning, Ifa and Asuta packed their things. The girl turned to him and said that it was already light. You can go home. To which he agreed, after which he staggered. She asked if they should ask the Rue family for a bed because they had been celebrating all night, but he refused and said he was worried about their supplies. They should go shopping. Ifa said that only when it comes to this issue is he surprisingly conscientious. He asked her again, was it really only then? And then he said that Gazlan Rutim had paid decently. It would be necessary to take care of the girl's hearth. To which she smiled. They headed home. On the way, she asked him if he was really okay. To which he asked her in surprise. Ifa explained that you need to go through the suspension bridge for shopping, and he does not get along with him. He stopped and looked at this bridge in frustration. At first he thought that he had completely forgotten about this fact, and then that there was a man on the bridge, and he was also shaking with fear. The man turned around, and he realized that he had seen him somewhere before. Then the man turned to face them. At that moment, the board under him cracked and split into 2 parts. He started to fall down. Asuta was afraid for him. The man was falling, and when he fell, he managed to grab the rope of the Mozat. He hung on and exhaled with relief. Ifa told him not to move. She was going to help him. To which the man told her not to approach him, as he would fall off. After a while, they reached their house. The girl and Asuta were sitting on the floor. The latter was thinking about what the head would do in this situation. In front of them sat the same man they had met near the bridge. He was very excited and asked what this bedspread was made of. The pattern was too old, but what beautiful walls made of wood. They just stared at him in silence. Both Asuta and Ifa looked a little confused at the picture that presented itself and wondered what to do in such a situation. The main character remembered that they did not listen to the man and still went to his aid. Grabbing him by the arm, they began to pull him out of this hole. When they managed to do this, he jumped up and thanked them, saying that he thought he would fall. He was embarrassed and he put one hand behind his head. Ifa asked him what he was doing here at all, to which he winked at her and said that he had come to study the people of the forest. Asuta and the girl looked at him blankly. Taking the bags back in their hands, they headed towards the house. The girl said that she should have stayed at home today after all. The main character agreed with her. The unknown also agreed with her. The 3 of them walked down the path one after the other. At one point, Ifa turned to him and asked why he was following them. He smiled at her and asked her if she was the one who organized the coven in Genos and said that he also had an interest in her. She viciously told him to keep out of her sight. He looked into her eyes gently and said that he understood everything. And as a result, this man ended up at their house. Asuta asked why he was here, to which she replied that he had come to avoid her eyes. He went to the hearth and asked if it was a hearth, to which the main character approached him and said that this was a cooking hearth. The unknown man said that he understood and asked what they were cooking. He smiled and said that more often they cooked dishes from gibba meat. He imagined a beautiful fried piece on a plate. The man was inspired and, after asking if it was definitely made of jibba meat, asked if he could too. To which Ifa, looking at him, inquiringly asked. He asked back. Asuta realized that this was a tense moment. The girl told him to throw some fried meat to the unknown, to which the man said that his name was Kamawa Yeshu, and he was a defender. The main character asked him if he was really a defender. He confirmed this and said that his job was to protect important people along the way. He had heard that the Prilesians were descendants of a people who fled from the south to the west, so he was interested in them. It's not every day you hear about people who changed God during their lifetime. Asuta interrupted him and, putting a handkerchief on his head, said that he was starting cooking. Kamoa smelled the cooking meat and asked if it belonged to Jibe. He said that he, a man from the people of the western capital, had the honor to taste this masterpiece for the first time today. Asuta put a plate with a ready piece of meat on his hand and told him that it would cool down. He quickly sat down on the floor and began to eat it with great appetite. While he was eating, the main character, along with Ifoi, sat opposite him and watched him. The girl thought that it seemed to her that the inhabitants of the stone capital had an aversion to eating jibba meat. Kamwe was very happy. He said it was the first time he had eaten such delicious meat, and he was touched. Then he asked if their family really had the exclusive right to cook this delicious meat. Ifa started to get a little angry at his words. When Asuta saw her, he was scared and thought she was angry. The girl turned to him and clarified his name once again. She jumped to her feet and walked over to Kamwa. After that, she said that he did not yet know the full charm of jibba meat. Asuta, sitting behind her, looked at her questioningly. The defender asked with a very serious look what the peculiarity was. Ifa grinned, and then she said that the beauty lies in Hamburg. The main character thought that he knew she would say that. Kamwa immediately asked what it was, to which the girl proudly told Asuta to show him. The latter thought that she just wanted cutlets. The main character fried 3 cutlets in a frying pan. Periodically, he looked at Ifu and the defender. The latter was telling the girl about his life and how he had signed up to guard the merchants from Genos. On the way, he went into the village of the Prilesians to see if they would let them through or not, and fell down. The girl looked at him seriously. She said she understood his words, but she had no intention of being hospitable to the stone people. Kamwe said he understood, because trust cannot be built with words alone. Then Asuta came up to them with 2 plates of cutlets. He apologized to them for interrupting their conversation, but said the hamburgers were ready. He set the table and said that there was no time, so only a little potan and fried aria turned out for their dinner. Kamwe exclaimed joyfully. The latter asked what kind of hamburger it was, to which he was told that it was on a wooden plate. Then he asked where the fountain was, to which they replied that it was a white flatbread. Ifa then told him that he didn't need words. When he started eating, he would understand everything. Asuta put his palms together and, smiling, wished everyone a pleasant appetite. Kamwe made the same gesture. After that, he took a spoon and decided to try the first course. The defender ate all the food with a spoon, then reached for a new portion. At the same time, his face looked like he didn't like it. Ifa and Asuta were scared. The man was sitting with his eyes wide open and looking up. The girl asked the main character what he had done, to which he asked how she could say such a thing in front of people. He did nothing. Suddenly, Kamwa burst into tears. Sobbing made his body shake. Ifa and Asuta, who were sitting next to him, looked at him in shock and could not say anything. The defender slammed his fists on the floor and, continuing to cry, asked how such tender and delicious meat could be made from a snake's flesh. It's mind-boggling. Asuta and Ifa did not expect this at all. They remained silent. And Kamwai will continue to exclaim that he is a gourmet from the stone capital, but he cannot understand how they make such delicious meat. Then he picked up a flatbread and took a bite out of it. Then he asked if it was really poitan. How could he make this food from poitan? Asuta and Ifa continued to stare at him in disbelief. Calming down, he also looked at them. Then he apologized for being a little carried away, and he asked about the fact that this is their usual food in the forest, to which the girl replied that she did not know, but she can say with certainty that they were taught to cook by Asuta. The latter thought to himself that suddenly the topic of conversation had shifted to him. Kamwai immediately asked him that he was not an alien, and said that in general he looked a little different from them. While the defender turned away, he asked the girl how to explain everything to him now, to which she replied as he wanted. Asuta was nervous. He began his story by saying that he was born and raised in Japan, woke up and found himself in the forest. He thought to himself, well, at least he's telling the truth. Kamui asked him about Japan, and he confirmed it. Then the defender asked him if he had really moved here. But Ifa interrupted him and said that he had found out where Asuta was from. And she asked if Tom liked the dinner, to which Kamui looked away, and then, returning it, he already smiled and said that of course he liked the food prepared by the main character. Then Ifa said that they continued to have dinner, after which she turned to Asuta and said that there were few hamburgers. He was surprised, because he did more this time. And the defender asked if there were any more poitons. After a while, Kamui left their house. He thanked them for their hospitality and for learning a lot about the forest area. The girl said she was happy for him. The main character told him to be careful on the bridge. He turned around to say goodbye. Ifa, looking at him, thought that it was like a hurricane had passed. Asuta agreed with her, and Kamui winked and shouted at him to try to open his shop in Genis. Kamui stood with his back to the main character, who addressed him by name. Then he turned around and asked if he wanted to open a shop in the stone capital, after which he winked at him. Asuta screamed in his sleep, then abruptly sat up and said that it was just a dream. Ifa stood over him and addressed him. She sat down, crossed her arms over her chest, and asked if he couldn't wake up quietly and calmly. He was brushing his teeth at that moment, so he vaguely said that he was scared. The girl asked him if he dreamed of a suspension bridge, to which he replied in the negative, explaining that they had not passed it then. He told me that he dreamed that Kamui was chasing him. Ifa introduced the latter's face and said it was really scary, to which Asuta asked him what he was talking about. The girl said she could see the thoughts of the stone capital still haunted him, and he's also thinking about Kamui's offer. He remembered how they had spoken to Ifa after the latter had left. Asuta said that opening a shop in the stone capital was too much like a joke, to which the girl asked about what was wrong here. He was surprised and asked her again, and then added that the last time they were there, she said that the city was a bunch of bad people, to which she said that she hadn't said that specifically. Then he asked her that she didn't like the city. She said that wasn't quite true. She doesn't like dead people. Asuta was scared and asked if those dead people had money, to which she said that he had been to the stone capital. Ifa explained that they bought the products for Giba's fangs and asked if he remembered about it, to which he agreed in surprise. She turned away and said they could trade fangs with him now, but he asked her what was wrong. Ifa said that if he could cook and sell meat to them, then they would be able to pay with meat. If they eat his burgers, they will only be in the black. Asuta said he could see the greed in her eyes, to which she asked what he was carrying. She said that Jiba meat can bring prosperity to the forest area, and then there will be fewer people who die of malnutrition, because they did not collect enough fangs for Poitan and Arya. The main character shuddered and thought that she was pushing so hard, then so. He apologized to her and said he wanted to hear the opinions of other aliens. After a while, he asked others, and Gazlan Rutan told him the same thing, although he told the latter that then they would call him Jibajur in the stone capital. Ifa told him that he was stubborn, and then asked if they would go to the city, to which he asked, in order to meet with Kamui, and explained that he said he would be there at the hotel if he crossed the bridge in one piece. After a while, they came to the city. Asuta was surprised that they had done it after all, and the girl said that since they came, he could study the passers-by. He thought about the fact that people here are of all different skin colors, but their faces are still unhappy. Some of them have a completely indifferent expression on their faces. Asuta wondered if he would be able to sell dishes made from jiba meat. Then I thought that they say that the opposite of sympathy is indifference. After all, if there is not a single shop near the forest. But then Ifa interrupted him and said, "That's it." The main character did not have time to switch from his thoughts, so he asked if she was really talking about the Pryla's shop, to which she asked him what he was talking about. She took him to the building and said that she was talking about the hotel where Kamui was staying. It was called Kamui Tale. Asuta got nervous, turned around and asked over his back if they could go home. But Ifa replied with a categorical refusal. She said that they had reached it. If they came back, it would be a waste of time. He tried to whine, but but she told him to make a decision here and now. The main character opened the door to the hotel. Then a blonde boy greeted him and asked if his name was by any chance Asuta, to which he replied that it was and then asked the boy's name. The man looked at him and hesitantly apologized. He said his name was Wreath and he was Kamwe's apprentice. Asuta thought about who he was and said out loud that he felt sorry for him. The boy asked again, but he replied that he had not said anything. Wreath escorted them to the stairs and told them that the defender was on the second floor and asked if they would deign to go with him, to which Asuta agreed. Then the boy shouted to Kamwe that a guest had come to him. The apprentice sighed and said that guests from the forest had come to him, and then said that he would take them to his room, after which he addressed them by name. Wreath walked with a smile on his face and said that he was most likely asleep, to which Asuta asked, "Well, they won't wake him up." But Ifa was pushing him under the back from behind and telling him to go. The boy opened the door to his room and, calling him by name, said that he had guests. In the room, the lower half of a man's body was lying on a table. Asuta, seeing this, shuddered and mumbled. He thought he was dead. Ifa made a displeased expression and said that it was a disgusting sleeping position. Wreath shook his body and told him to wake up, as guests from the forest had come to him, and asked him to pull himself together. The main character wondered if he could pull himself together. Then Kamwa stirred and asked if Asuta and Ifa had really come to him. Then he put his head back and sniffed. Wreath grabbed him by the arms and began to pull, while telling him to stop lying around, since there were guests in front of him. The main character looked at the girl and hopefully into her eyes, asked if they could go home. A few moments later, he heard Kamwa calling his name. He turned abruptly. He told them to start discussing the case already. After a while, Asuta met with Kamua. He asked the latter if their meeting was a business conversation, to which he asked if he had come to talk to him about opening a shop in Genos, and explained that in order to start selling, you need to pay. In 10 days, he asked to pay with Kim Yusa meat, somewhere as much as 10 mantas fits, and he also takes 1/10 of the net profit. He asked if this was a good offer for him, to which Asuta thought about the manta rays made from this meat. Kamui asked him if he had ever eaten this dish. The main character replied that it was once, to which the man said that it was good. There were shops everywhere with them. He said that he really likes mantas from Kimusa. It is the most popular dish in the city. And I asked Asuta what his opinion was on this matter. When he did not wait for his answer, Kamui said that his cooking from Jiba was quite comparable to them, and asked if he had convinced him. To which the main character said that he was not sure that there would be people who would be willing to buy Jiba meat. The defender raised his fist in front of him, and said that as a certified gourmet, he guarantees, because his cooking from Giba is amazing. Asuta, looking at him, wondered if he was serious. Then he remembered how he had reacted to the food he had cooked, and thought again that this was not the case. A guy came up to him and asked if he was okay, but the main character did not answer, thinking that he had already heard Kamwe's words somewhere. He turned abruptly to Ifi and said that he wanted to talk, and there would be another stranger with them, after which he asked if she would mind, to which the girl said that she did not mind and asked that, therefore he needed time to think. After a while, they came to the house of Dan Ryouridou. He was sitting on the floor and, with his arms crossed in front of him on his chest, was listening attentively to them. He said that dinner was coming soon and asked why he had decided to consult with him, to which Asuta said that he would like to ask his opinion. The head of the family said again that dinner was coming soon. Dan was delighted and came to the conclusion that the main character came to him so that he could try his new dish with fried meat. Asuta was sitting next to him, very surprised. The head of the Ryouridou family looked at him with such devoted and waiting eyes that the main character could not refuse him. He answered his question positively. After a while, he placed plates of cooked food in front of the people present. Dan Ryouridou was pleased and said that this was a new dish. But Asuta said no, it's the same dish. After that, everyone wished each other a pleasant appetite, and then began to eat in silence. Looking at this, he tried to remember why he was here. Ifa, who was sitting next to him, grabbed his clothes and pulled a little to get his attention. He turned to her and realized that she was angry. Gazan turned to Asuta and said that he had come about his new question in thought, to which the latter said that this time he would like to ask Dan Ryouridou's opinion. After listening to the whole situation, The head said that cooking jiba meat and selling it in the city is the same as selling horns and fangs there. He does not encroach on the grace of the forest and does not abuse any prohibition. He explained that he was confused about whether people would eat meat, to which Dan called him by name and, eating his food, exclaimed that he couldn't imagine what kind of fool wouldn't like it. He didn't understand what he was talking about at all. Ghazlan told him that he thought he should discuss the matter within the Fa house. And now it is very late, so he will prepare a bed for them. They were shown into a room where there was nothing else on the floor except for one mattress. They were told that this was their overnight stay. Asuta was surprised that there was one bed for two. And the girl who took them to the room asked if they didn't mind that the room was the same because they were living under the same roof. Ifa thanked her for welcoming their sudden visit so warmly. To which she was told that there was nothing to thank them for, so that they rested and did not hurry to leave. The girl went up to the rug, sat down to touch it, and said that it was still better, soft, not like at home. Ifa turned to Asuta and told him to come in soon because he liked soft. He stood on the threshold and was embarrassed. He looked away and asked if he could ask for another rug there, to which the girl made a very unhappy face. She said she knew he liked the bed, but they were visiting, no need to ask. To which he tried to explain that this was not the case. Ifa knelt down in front of him, unwound her hair and told him to come into the room, to which he agreed. As a result, they lay down together on the same mat. Asuta was lying with his back to the girl and felt that she was very close to him. He was very shy while she stared at him. She moved even closer and called his name. He started in surprise and asked what she wanted. Ifa asked about the fact that he'd actually already decided everything, to which he asked in surprise. She explained that she was talking about opening a shop in Genos. He turned to face her and said that the bench would need more cooking utensils, the ones that are few. She looked into his eyes and asked what was next, to which he said that it was not only his problem. He needed more money and his resolution. Ifa turned her head away and said that she had given him the go-ahead from the very beginning. Asuta opened his eyes wide in surprise and continued to stare at her. She explained that he probably did not notice that he only asked people about the reasons not to open a shop. So, in fact, deep down he wants to open his own. The main character looked at her incredulously. Ifa turned to him and said that he wanted to ask him. They continued to lie opposite each other, looking into each other's eyes. She held out her hand to him, and then she asked if he would let her, as a member of his family, help him. Then she put her hand on her hair. His heart began to beat faster from the fact that she started stroking his hair, and he thought about how she called herself a member of the family. She continued to stroke him, smiling at him very tenderly. He took her hand to stop her actions. The main character examined all parts of her body, after which he returned his gaze to her face. His heart began to beat faster. Still holding one of her hands in his, he put the other lightly on her shoulder and called her name. After a while, Asuta left their guest room, and then returned back to, exhaling loudly at the same time. He clenched his hands into fists in front of him and said decisively that that was it. Ifa was lying on their mattress. She turned over on her side and asked what was all there. The main character turned to her, and with a smile on his face told her that he had decided that he would open a shop. The girl even sat down on the mattress and said that she understood his decision, and then asked if he was really going to Kamwayeshu now, to which Asuta shuddered when he remembered him. After a while, they left the house at Rutum. On the way, Ifa, thinking that they were going to the city, said that it was in the other direction, to which the main character turned to her and said that he had confused, so he offered to go home and decide what to buy. Finally, they reached the house. Asuta began to look through what they had at home and wondered what new things he could cook from jiba. Just as he was about to suggest an option, Ifa interrupted him and said about Hamburg. He looked at her and asked her what she meant, to which she folded her arms and said decisively about Hamburg. The main character thought about it and was surprised. Asuta tried to take the subject away from Hamburg, but the girl interrupted him, denying all his fame, and again said about Hamburg. The main character realized that it was useless to argue with her, so he just agreed. After a while, he fried several cutlets in a frying pan. Ifa was sitting very impatient but at the same time pleased. She said that this time it turned out to be smaller and asked if it was already possible to eat, to which Asuta said that it was possible. She happily said that then he would bring spoons. But the hero stopped her and said that as the owner of a street shop, she could not just hand out a plate with a spoon to each customer. Then, In shock, she asked him what to do in this case. Asuta just told her to eat with her hands. She held out her hand in front of her, then turned her gaze to the cutlets. She abruptly took one of the cutlets with her hand, but it turned out to be hot, so it was uncomfortable to hold it. The cutlet fell, and Ai-Fa exclaimed that it was hot. Asuta looked at it resignedly and thought that this was to be expected. He asked her that it was still difficult to eat with your hands, to which she replied in the negative. Ai-Fa immediately grabbed the cutlet with her hand and immediately put it in her mouth. The food was still hot, so she couldn't even take a bite, but only shouted that it was hot. The main character only noticed that the juice had already gone. She turned away from him. Then, he came up to her from behind and said that the hamburgers would not be suitable for sale in the store after all, to which she agreed with him. At the same time, she blushed and was all sticky from the juice of the meat. Asuta said that this is what Kimyusa mantas are good for, since they are easy to eat. Therefore, he came up with the idea to wrap the cutlets in a poitan. I-4 looked at him in shock, and then asked him if he was on purpose or not. The main character did not understand, so he asked again, to which she said that no. She did not say anything like that. She would go and wipe herself for now. When the girl returned, he handed her a cutlet wrapped in a poitan and told her to try it. She agreed, and, taking the food, she immediately took a bite. Asuta asked her about her current dish. She thought about it and said that the juice does not pour out. It's good, but the poitan has a strong taste and she would rather eat one hamburger. And I don't want to finish the rest of the poitan. The main character thanked her for her feedback, to which she said that she was not grateful. He thought her opinion was chillingly honest. Asuta realized that the sauce was needed and the taste was not enough. Finds herself by this idea, he pulled a handkerchief over his head and said that with what they had in the pantry, he would come up with something. Ai-Fa agreed with him. After a while, he cooked a new dish and put it on the table in front of the girl. She asked if she could try, to which Asuta agreed. Ai-Fa started chewing the food. After she swallowed, the main character asked her opinion. She smiled. Her cheeks turned red, and she said that this was what was needed. He was delighted and said that everything was clear to him. The girl resolutely stated that they would put this Kamui Yeshiv down with one blow, to which Asuta asked again about the fact that they would put him down. It was decided that tomorrow they would go to the tale of Kimyusa. The next day they came to the hotel. Kamui asked them that they had brought the food they wanted to sell in the shop in a bag, to which the main character agreed. The defender was delighted and blushed, said that then why were they wasting time? Let them already lay out the food. Asuta apologized to him and said that he was not very pleasant to look at the moment. Kamui said that he was fooling around, after which he asked to show the food already. The main character agreed and took out a box with a new dish. He placed it on the table in front of the defender. He took it in his hands and said that it was still warm, and then opened it. There was still smoke coming from there. Kamui was surprised and asked if this was the same jibba dish he had eaten, to which Asuta remained silent. The man turned the dish towards the main character and indignantly said that the meat was red. It was wrapped in a poitan and drizzled with sauce on top, to which Asuta explained that it was a sauce made from boiled tarapa, and he also added tino and aria to make it pleasant to chew. He and Kamui exchanged glances. Then the latter said that he would not understand until he tried, after which he bit into the food. He began to chew it, and because of its taste, his heart began to beat faster, and a blush appeared on his cheeks. Kamui picked up a piece of the dish and handed it to his assistant Wreath, telling him to try a little. He got a little nervous and agreed with him. After eating the whole piece, he was also delighted. A blush appeared on his cheeks, and he said that it crunched very pleasantly, and the meat was soft in sauce, very tasty. Asuta thanked them from the bottom of his heart. He thought that when he heard the criticism from Ai-Fa, he decided to make a dish in the likeness of a burger. Kamui turned to him and asked him what he called his dish. The main character did not expect the question at first, and then resolutely clenched his hand into a fist and said that it was a jibba burger. And then he turned to the defender and asked his opinion on whether he would be given a shop for rent, to which the latter seemed to exclaim. And he explained that the owner of the Tale of Chemis had said that he agreed to rent him a mobile stall, to which Asuta asked if it was really that simple. He asked if it was possible to set prices himself, to which Kamui agreed, explaining that it was his business after all. The man also said that as soon as he was going to open up, let him tell him, and then everything would be fine. Asuta said that he understood him and thanked him from the bottom of his heart. The main character thought about the fact that everyone who tried liked his gib burger, and he was worried whether the food would sell with the meat of a jibba. Remembering that Ifa and Kamawa Yeshu were the main fans of this dish, he thought it was worth worrying about. Asuta and Ifa returned home. He was sitting on the bed and thinking about something. The girl turned to him and said that when they left the hotel, he was thinking about something very much. The main character said that he was thinking about what price it is. Better to sell jibba burgers. She whispered about what the price meant. Asuta shared with her that he was thinking about selling jibba burgers for 2 coppers. That is, at the same price as mantis from Kimyuza. Ifa said emotionlessly that that's how it is. He continued and said that the ingredients Arya, Poitan, Tino with Tarapa and Gigo were mixed with Poitan. The girl said even more dejectedly that that's how it was. Asuta continued his reasoning that if you make 20 pieces a day, then the cost of each will be 0.65. It is worth adding in the rent and loan payments for the stall in 10 days. He said with a serious look that it was 20 coppers. The ingredients will cost the most 0.65 per piece, which means the revenue per piece will be 1.35. Ifa was already getting nervous from these calculations. She sat down opposite him, put her hand to her face and asked what it all meant. To which Asuta said that this means that according to his calculations, the jibba burgers need to be sold at least 60 pieces in 10 days in order not to be at a loss. Ifa exhaled from the fact that his calculations were finally over. She asked again that in 10 days you need to sell 60 burgers for 2 coppers apiece. She thought to herself that she already had a headache. The girl stood up and, staggering, began to move. Asuta approached her and asked about her well-being, saying that she was still bad with numbers. She put on a cape and said that she was the head of the house. She would do her job and let him think for himself and act. Asuta came closer to her and agreed with her words. And then, seeing that she was going somewhere, he asked where she was going. She turned to him and said that she was going hunting. Then the main character said thank you to her for helping with the shop. And then it dawned on him that now there would be no help from Ifi for him, and he will have to do everything himself, for example, bring food, serve the customer, cook, calculate the cost. These thoughts made him feel sick, so he doubled over. Ifa, seeing this, asked what happened to him, to which Asuta said that he had forgotten that she was a hunter. The girl pulled him back and said it sounded rude. Before leaving, she told him that the Ryu family had found someone who was interested in his business with the shop, and asked if he would like to listen. The main character, without straightening up, only said about the surname Ryu. After a while, Vina Ryu came to him, who told him that it was really true that he was going to open a shop in Stone City. When he saw her, he thought that she was the right person. He answered positively and told her to come into the house. She became interested, and she asked what kind of shop he was going to open. Asuta turned to her and said that she would have to tell him about what he was going to sell and how to cook it. The guilt was still in a state of misunderstanding. He led her to a table with various products on it. The girl, looking at all this, asked if it was all the ingredients of the dish. She listed that there are jiba, tarapa, aria, tino, poitan, and gigo. Asuta began to tell me how to cook it. First, you need to grind the gigo, knead the poitan, fry, and now they have fried poitan. Then they put all the ingredients for the jib burger on a plate. The main character entered the cook mode, wearing a headscarf, and said that now they would learn how to make tarapa sauce. First, you need to put the tarapa in boiling water, and when the peel is gone, pour out the water and add a little wine to the pan. Then salt, herbs to taste, fry it all with tarapa, and if tarapa becomes so slippery and smooth, then the tarapa sauce is ready. Then he threw the cutlet into the air and said that then we tamp the cutlet out of the jive so that it fits in one palm and put it in a frying pan to fry. Vina asked him about the word tamper, but he continued to tell the recipe. After that, finely chop the aria and tino and sprinkle with toasted poitan. Put a fried hibi cutlet on top and pour tarap sauce over it. Top it all with fried poitan, and lo and behold, the jibba burger is ready. At the same time, he showed the girl how he should look. When Vina heard the name, she asked him again that the dish was called gaba, burger, to which he handed her a plate and told her to eat. The girl agreed. First, she took a small bite and chewed thoroughly, after which she put the remaining dish on the table. At first, she did not understand her feelings, but just a few moments later, a smile appeared on her face, and her cheeks turned red. Vina said that the fountain here is so plump, and the meat of the jibba is the right size. Asuta thought that, apparently due to the addition of ground gigo, such as yams, the fountain swelled. He was glad that he had new reviews. He turned to the wine and said that they had the ingredients. The utensils were there. They only needed wood for the fire. Asuta asked her to bring them. The girl didn't seem to understand him and said that, of course, she would do it. Firewood was no problem. But at the same time, she did not move from her place. He thought that he had forgotten that in this world his place could be called a beggar's scourge. Asuta pulled the handkerchief off his head, and his eyes became so sad. Vina, seeing his condition, asked about what happened to him, to which he said that it was nothing like that. The main character said that in 3 days he was going to take it to the Stone City and start renting a shop there, so he asked her if she could come there in the morning. Evening came. Ifal returned from hunting. Stretching, she asked if everything had gone smoothly for him. Asuta was sitting with his back against the wall and his legs pulled up to him. He emotionlessly said yes. He thought that while talking, he had completely forgotten that he was not in Japan. He had not even allowed the thought of stealing and stupid fights. Ifa said that she would be hunting and he would be at the store. Together they would somehow cope with both, and she clarified whether he agreed with her. Asuta strongly agreed with her and thought that he was also a fa, so he could do anything. 3 days later, he was standing outside the house, having collected all the necessary items, and was waiting for Ryouridou. But he did not see anyone on the horizon, and thought about how she would come faster. Immediately he was called by name, and Vina informed him that she had come. Asuta was startled, and then smiled and said that it was great. A girl stood in front of him. Her hair was gathered into a standard hairstyle, but her clothes had changed. Now there was a floor-length dress with a large neckline on the side. Asuta asked what kind of outfit she was wearing, to which she explained that when the Proski go to the Stone City, they dress in such a way as to cover as much skin as possible with a cloth. He thought about the fact that even though she had covered, everything stood out well. Vina put her fingers together and said that she had just told him that she would go to his shop, and another person wanted to go with them. Then an unknown person came out from behind. The main character, upon seeing him, could only exclaim in surprise. It turned out to be Ryouridou. Asuta asked him why he was here, to which he asked him why he said that. He actually came to guard him on the road. Vina immediately joined in the dialogue and said that he seemed to have said that he wanted to go when he heard about the opening of the shop. The guy started to get indignant and said that he just had free time sometimes, so he decided to go. Ryu blushed and told the girl to look at Asuta. If he is there alone, he may be attacked, because he is a scourge, and others will definitely want to do it. The main character was shocked by his words. He sniffed and asked Ryouridou to help him with his things, to which Ryouridou agreed. After dividing things among themselves, his assistants looked at him carefully and nodded to him. Asuta happily said that they were moving to the Stone City. Both Vina and Ryouridou were determined. As usual, their road passed through a suspension bridge. Arriving in the city, the main character said that they had arrived. At the same time, he looked like he was ready to collapse right now. His assistants looked at him in disbelief. They asked if he was okay, to which he replied that everything was fine. After that, he said that they now have to go to the Tale of Kimusa to rent a shop. When he reached the place, he just saw her near the building. Asuta was shocked by her. Ryouridou approached her and said that he had dragged her to the right place. After looking at the main character, he asked if something was really wrong. He said that everything was fine. Asuta already thought he was dead, but he ended up in an unknown land. He remembered his dad and how he worked with him. He felt sorry that he couldn't even tell his father about it. He has his own establishment, albeit a tiny one, but nothing. Asuta changed his face, became more determined, and, smiling at Ryouridou, told him to bring everything faster and start preparing for the opening. They walked through the streets of the city, and the three of them rolled a shop. The men were in front, and the girl in the back was helping to roll. All attention was focused on them. People immediately started talking about the opening of the shop by the residents of the forest. They also talked about what they were going to sell. Asuta thought that he was the center of attention like never before in his life, and that was good. The main character showed them where they need to put the shop. He said it was bad if people were disgusted by the very fact of opening a shop for them. When they arrived at the place, they realized that they were at the very edge of the shopping street. The assistants agreed with him and said that they were too much on the edge. Then Asuta told them to decompose first. Ryouridou agreed with him. They put the ingredients in a prominent place. Together, they resolutely looked around the shop, and the main character thought that from that day on, he would be here on his own to meet his goal. Asuta picked up one of the bags and said that he needed to put the food in its place. Ryouridou asked where to put the firewood, to which he replied that 5-6 logs should be put in the place indicated by him. Vina asked him if Arya could be put there. The main character agreed with her and said that a cauldron should be brought there. The cutlets will be lying here, so sideways. The box would have to be borrowed from someone to stand on it. They found the box that Asuta sat on. Everyone was happy. He said it was nice and everything was ready. Then he turned to Vina and Ryouridou and thanked them from the bottom of his heart. They smiled at him and said it was nothing. There was nothing to thank him for. The main character looked at it all and thought it was his shop. And then he remembered that, of course, she was his. But if it hadn't been for Ifa and the other Prialis, then nothing would have worked out for him. He came to the conclusion that it was no longer just his shop, but no one came up to them. Asuta was very upset. He approached Vina and asked if it would be possible to somehow invite people, to which she said that it was forbidden. They were preparing a dish, and then he heard someone sneaking nearby. He turned at the sound and saw a man walking by. Asuta turned to Vina and asked her to put the Arya on the fountain. She agreed. The main character met the man's gaze. They were already waiting for him to approach them, but the man broke off contact and just walked past. The main character followed that look. He reached the end of the street, turned around and walked back. Vina and Asuta were a little upset, but then, to cheer up, he said that everything was fine because they had just opened. The girls supported him. He asked Tom where the people who were here had gone when they were laying out the shop. Next to them, Ryouridou leaned against the wall and yawned. Looking at this, the main character thought that it was bad, because even their guard was nodding off. He thought of Ife. At this rate, not only will they not fulfill the daily plan of 10 burgers, but their products can also be wasted. Asuta said that this should be avoided, so he turned to Vina Rue and asked her to serve him a cutlet. He immediately added the necessary ingredients to it. An amazing smell began to emanate from the pan. The assistant appreciated it and said that it smells delicious. The fragrance began to reach the people standing not so far away. They became interested and approached their shop. There were more and more people watching what he was cooking. As a result, one man realized that the cutlets were made of jibe meat, which he informed the others. Asuta saw how people, having heard this, began to leave back, saying that they would refrain from buying. The main character got upset and clenched his hands into fists. He remembered the faces of those people who looked back at him and walked further away from the shop. He thought that everything was clear to him and asked himself if, after all, the non-forest people would not accept the meat of the jibba. He was pulled out of his thoughts by Guilt, who called his name. Several men in light-colored clothes, whose head was covered with a hood, approached their shop. One of them with blonde hair asked if the dish was made of jibe and would ask for 1 piece. He cooked 1 jib burger and, having informed that it costs 2 coppers, held out his hand. I thought to myself that these men have black skin. They are together all the time and they are wearing suspicious raincoats. The stranger handed him 2 coins and took a burger. Asuta looked at him expectantly, wondering if he would eat or not. As a result, the man took a bite. The men continued to stand near Asuta's shop. That blonde stranger was eating a burger and the main character was looking at it. Looking at them, he thought that they were hardly residents of Genos, but they were strangers to him too. But at the same time, his first customers. The stranger ate the whole burger in front of his eyes, then turned to his comrades. He started to say something to them. After that, everyone started whispering among themselves. Asuta looked at them in disbelief and wondered what kind of reaction they had. And suddenly the same stranger said that they wanted to buy 7 more pieces. The main character, as if he hadn't heard them, continued to look at them with an uncomprehending expression on his face. Vina got nervous and said that they wanted to buy 7 more pieces. He finally got the full meaning of the situation. He just took note of it. And I thought about the fact that the men were probably discussing a trial purchase. They came closer to the shop, and he turned to them to tell them that they needed to pay 14 coppers. They handed over the coins, and he, in turn, gave them the burgers, taking them in their hands. They left them in the same crowd. Asuta thanked them and told them to come back. Vina smiled and said that they had already sold 8 pieces. The main character once again said that they had sold as many as 8 pieces, and then he thought that he had not heard their impressions of the food. Looking at the coins he received, he thought that he had already sold 8 out of 10 pieces, which means that he will definitely fulfill the norm today. Time has passed. They were still standing and waiting for new customers, but no one came. Vina said it was already noon. He agreed with her, but by that time, none of the buyers had come up like that. Asuta turned around. There were 2 burgers behind him. He was thinking about how some 2 burgers are so close and so far away. Then he saw a boy come up to him. Looking at him, he remembered who it was. He smiled and reminded me that he was Wreath, Kamwa Yeshu's apprentice. Asuta told Tom that he is rarely seen without a boss, to which he replied that the defender is currently busy, so he came today on his behalf. The main character thought that it was good that he did not come, and he asked aloud what business he had come for. Wreath turned serious abruptly, but he was a little embarrassed and apologized for what he would have to tell them now. Kemi asked me to tell him that he did not have the opportunity to eat a burger performed by Asuta, since things were not going well, after which he fell into bed, although there was still a lot to do. Listening to this, he imagined before his eyes how he was also shedding tears about it. Wreath took a coin out of the bag and asked them if they would sell him 1 burger. The main character smiled and said that, of course they would sell. He thought to himself that there was 1 more left. And then, confused even more, the apprentice said that he also wanted to, so he asked for 2 burgers. Asuta thought that he was an angel in the flesh. He replied that he would give him everything now. He thanked me in return. The main character thought that the first of the 10 days of his shop's existence had gone well. He, along with Vina and Ryouridou, reached his house, where he thanked them for their help, to which the girl told him to always apply. Asuta quietly opened the door of the house and announced that he had come. Ifa was sitting on the floor. He called her name. She turned around and said that he had returned early somehow. He asked her again why it was early. She explained that it was only noon recently. It was early. Ifa looked away and asked him if he had sold a dozen Geber burgers as planned, to which he said he had, with God's help. She turned sharply to him and asked what he meant. Asuta hesitated and thought that, after all, without Kamua's saving intervention, he would not have carried out the plan. The hand automatically clenched into a fist. Suddenly, he remembered and asked her that the people who wear long white robes still walk in a group all the time. They are from an eastern country, to which she replied that they were from the eastern lands. They are a group, probably because they came on business. And then Ifa asked about what he had with him. He replied that they had bought burgers from him from Giba. He was upset and thought that he had only bought a group of merchants. The girl smiled at him and said it was interesting. Asuta was surprised. She explained that the Chinese have no prejudice against Jibiatan, but she is a novelty to them. And if they wanted to buy it, then it means that he brought a good change to the people of the forest. Ifa praised him and said that he was doing well. Not expecting these words, Asuta froze at first and then blushed. He thanked her, to which the girl asked him why he was thanking her. He was shy and changed the subject, offering to cook dinner. He turned away and sat down, doing something for cooking. And the girl, looking at him, smiled sweetly. The next day, bad weather happened. It was raining heavily outside. Binaru said that it was sunny when they arrived. Asuta covered all the food and said it was good that it was just a downpour. He looked up at the sky and said that in the rain, those sheep might not come. The rain still did not stop. At that moment, Kemwei jumped up to the shop. He asked if they thought Wreath would drop by, just like yesterday, to which Asuta started in surprise. The main character said that no, he did not think so, to which the defender said that, therefore, he was waiting for him. And then he also said that this is also a no. Kama coughed a little and asked him for 3 burgers, to which Asuta asked if he had really introduced someone to Jibiatan. But he said that this was not the case. 2 burgers for him and 1 burger for Wreath. The main character thought that he was such a child. but he buys and thank God. The man handed him 6 coppers. Asuta thanked him and told him to come back, and then handed him 3 burgers. Kamui said goodbye to them and told them to try their best. The man put the food under his cape so that it wouldn't get soaked by the rain. He said that he was very unpleasant today, which the main character agreed with. Meanwhile, an accident happened in another place. The rain continued to pour, forming small rivers on the roads, and in one of these, Ifa was lying unconscious. Vina and Asuta were still on the shopping street. He looked up and said that the rain was still not passing, and there was not a soul on the street. The girl agreed with him. After analyzing the situation, the main character decided that they were closing for today. He rushed to put out the fire on the stove. Vina was surprised and asked him if he was sure because they had only sold 3 pieces today. To which he replied that he understood. He explained that the stall is mobile. It is important to know when to curl up. Ryouridou, seeing that he had started packing, asked if they were really on their way home. Asuta was surprised to see the latter and asked him if he had been there. And then he apologized for having to carry the weights back again. Ryouridou began to get angry and said that it was not a matter of heaviness, but that it was dangerous to walk along mountain trails in a downpour with him. He did not want to. Asuta smiled condescendingly and said that he understood him. After a while, they decided to leave. The guy kept giving instructions to the main character to look at his feet and not fly. The latter was surprised that he was ahead of everyone. Ryouridou said that the same person understands what will happen if he slips. He thought that it was better than falling down alone and lying down, to which Asuta said that he understood him and would try very hard. The guy told him not to let them down. They walked all together, overcoming bad weather and a difficult road. Suddenly, the main character's foot got into some kind of hole. He stopped to see what had happened. Looking straight ahead, he saw something. My heart began to pound rapidly and my eyes opened in surprise. He immediately turned to Ryouridou and asked him to come over. He asked about what happened, to which he replied that it seemed that someone had fallen there. The main character turned around and asked what they would do, to which Ryouridou said that he would go and take a look. The latter told them to stand still, and immediately went down the road. Asuta said that he hopes that everything is fine there. Vina agreed with him. Ryouridou, approaching the lying man, immediately recognized him. He called out to Asuta by name, told him to put down his things, and slowly walked up to him. The girl told him to be careful. He thanked her. As he went downstairs, he thought about the fact that he could have been called for only one reason. Ryouridou, seeing that he had come down, told him to go to him. When he came up, he saw that it was Ifa lying there. Ryouridou confirmed his fears and said that the girl was unconscious. Asuta was afraid for her, quickly walked up to her, grabbed her arm to throw her on his back and pull her up. Ryouridou tried to stop him and told him to wait. He would go and call people. To which the main character said that how could she be left here? And then I asked him to help him, because Asuta and Ifa are one family, and he will carry her home. Ryouridou looked closely at how the main character picks up the girl, after which he squeezed his hand and said that he would help him. They started to climb up, and the guy from behind helped them by pushing them in the back. He told Asuta to hold her tight. They slowly went upstairs. Vina, seeing who they found there, began to worry. Ryouridou told her to go ahead of them. After a while, they reached Fa's house. Together, they brought Ifu into the house and planted her against the wall so that she would not fall. Asuta apologized to Ryouridou and said that he was now in his debt. He said that he did, and the next time he would give him a novelty bite. Guilt pulled him back. As she was leaving, she turned around and told the main character to take himself, and then said goodbye. Returning to the house, Asuta immediately lit a fire to make it warmer, took off his clothes to leave them to dry, and then decided to put them on the floor. The girl came to her room and mumbled. He immediately called her by name and asked how she was feeling. At first, she didn't understand anything. She looked around and asked why she was at home, to which Asuta told how she was lying in the woods, most likely because she was caught in a downpour. After that, he asked if she was cold, and if she was in pain anywhere. Ifa thought about the downpour, and then something seemed to prick her. He immediately asked her what happened, if she was in pain, to which she replied that everything was fine. He was indignant and said that it was good, let him go to bed already. The main character put her on a mattress and covered her to keep her warm. She said it was hard for her. He told her to wait a bit. He would give her some hot soup now. While the soup was being cooked, she continued to lie down. Turning slightly, Ifa realized that her right shoulder was dislocated. Asuta came up to her with a bowl of soup, touched it, and said that it was all cold, she needed to at least eat soup, and then asked if she could do it. Her cheeks flushed sharply. He asked her what had happened. The girl asked him to feed her. The main character said that he understood, and then was surprised when she suddenly stood up, leaning on her left hand, and opened her mouth slightly, ready to eat soup. He took a spoonful of soup, then gave it to Ai Fei. She continued to be embarrassed and ate the whole spoon. Asuta, looking at her, realized that he had started thinking about the wrong thing. He began to drive away the uninvited thoughts, telling himself that he was just courting her. After eating all the soup, the girl sat down on her knees. She turned to him and asked if he could put painkillers on his right shoulder. He didn't understand the question at first. Then she apologized to him and said she could go get him herself. The main character just looked after her. She got up and went to get what she needed. When she returned, she handed him an unfamiliar substance and told him that it was an anesthetic. He took it and said he understood. After that, with trembling hands, Asuta began to apply it to her right shoulder. She began to moan and mumble at his actions. When she started to gasp, he thought about what was going on. Embarrassed, he looked away from her. The main character addressed her by name and said that she had a fever and something was wrong. She agreed with him and said she would sleep. He said that she was thinking correctly, and at that moment she put her hand behind his back and pulled on his t-shirt. As a result, he had to lie down with her on the same mattress, and the girl snuggled very close to him. He couldn't think of anything but the distance between their bodies. Ai Fei managed to fall asleep, and she started calling Dad in her sleep. Asuta was surprised at first, and then remembered that she was only 17 years old, like him, and she was still a girl, as she lost her father. She lived alone all the time in a difficult time for her. The main character turned to face her and, closing his eyes, put his hand on her face and began to say that everything was fine, and he was with her. The next day, Asuta started packing up to go back to the city to trade. He asked Ai Fei if she really wanted to go with him, to which she agreed and explained that the fever had subsided. Besides, she would not be able to hunt with such a hand. She said that was the reason she would go to guard him in Genos, to which he smiled at her and told her not to overdo it. Ai Fei and Asuta left the house. Ryouridou and Vina were already walking towards them. The latter said that the head of the Fa would also go with them. The main character apologized to them for dragging them with him today. The blonde man said there was nothing wrong with that. Rui immediately turned to Ai Fei and asked if she could move already. Vina picked up the conversation and said that she had injured her arm. The head of the Fa bowed to them and apologized for causing trouble yesterday, and thanked them for carrying her home so much. She can't hunt yet, and will be going to Genos with them from now on. Asuta looked at her and thought that this situation bothered her after all. The girl continued and said that even with a damaged arm, she would be able to protect them from bandits. At least she should do it. Ryouridou was inspired by her words and, clenching his hands into fists, said that then they would go to the city and immediately eat. Vina expressed herself and asked if Asuta was paying him extra separately or something. They laughed together. After a while, they arrived at the place. Ai Fei saw it for the first time and asked if it was really his shop. He replied that it was her. Then he turned to Vina and asked her for help, as they had just arrived. Asuta took out the groceries. The girl asked him about the meat, to which he replied that he had left the minced meat at home in the rain, and yesterday he could not cook minced meat for cutlets. She said she understood everything. Then he turned to her and said that he was going to finally chop the meat, and asked her to knead it. She agreed. Ryouridou sat down by the wall as usual, stretched and said that he would rest a little, since people rarely go there anyway. They are at the very end of these streets. Passers-by rarely look in here, and those who come are usually on business. Ai Fei said she understood. The girl asked him that they would be customers after all, to which the blonde man answered her positively. Suddenly they heard someone's footsteps. Everyone decided that it was a buyer. Then a man came up to the shop and, turning to Asuta, said that no one came to him. Ai Fei immediately jumped up from her seat to protect him if anything. The stranger began to get indignant and say that he was selling their vegetables here because Kamui advised them to eat them, and then asked what they turned these vegetables into. Ai Fei, looking at the man with an indifferent look, asked what it was, to which Ryouridou explained to her that this man was a vegetable grower. She began to move towards the man. The blonde man tried to call out to her. The girl went up to the vegetable man and asked him if he had eaten a hamburger, and if not, then let him try. And then he says, Asuta, who was watching everything from the sidelines, realized that something bad was coming. The man turned to Ifei, called her a little girl. She asked him what he wanted. Suddenly, he began to smile and said that he could finally thank her and told her thank you for helping out his daughter. The head of the Fa asked him in shock. She apologized to him and said she didn't understand what he was talking about at all. The vegetable man closed his eyes and said that he had brought her with him today. He told his daughter Tara to show up. And then a little girl with short black hair came out in front of them. After looking at her, Ifa narrowed her eyes and said that she did not remember her at all. Then Tara called her. She told how the head of the Fa chased away a drunken Prilus when he ran over her. Ifa thought about it and decided that it was clearly one of the Sunkum. Then she said that she remembered something like that. Tara smiled at her words, and my father said that they should not use Gibiatina, but rather let them give their hamburger a try. One to him and one to Tara. Asuta looked at him and asked if he was sure about it. To which the vegetable man said that, why not? It's interesting to see what he makes of his vegetables. The main character turned to Ryouridou with a request that she put Tino on top of Fortan. She said that she understood him. The man closely followed their actions and commented, saying that they finally chopped the mud, and so you can't feel its charm. Next, he thought about what Asuta was frying, not very similar to chicken. He saw how the hero put it on Tino. What does he even want to do? The main character handed them 2 hamburgers, apologized for waiting, and said they were ready. The vegetable man looked at this dish in shock and said that yes, it would cost 6 coppers. Tara, not waiting for her father, immediately took a bite of the burger. My father turned around and was surprised by this. The girl chewed with difficulty. Her cheeks turned red. Asuta wondered if the chicken had turned out to be sharp after all. Tara headed towards Ifei. Going up to her, she called her and said that it was very tasty. She looked very determined, and it was clear that she really liked it. The vegetable man, looking at this picture, thought about his shy daughter behaving like this. Ifa smiled at her words and said she was glad. The man thought that he would not lose, so he also decided to take a bite of the burger. He ate it completely and wondered if it was really chicken. He went up to Asuta and said that the crushed Tino felt good in his mouth. He replied, and the thing between the rolls, similar to veal, could also be eaten. The main character did not expect such pressure and said that it was ground chicken. The vegetable man thought about it and asked him that since he was crushing meat, then why not use other meat because nothing would change, and then clarified that he was also selling chicken. To which Asuta replied positively. He explained to the man that he does not think the jibba burgers are bad, he just wants more people to learn about the delights of this type of meat. He thought to himself that somehow he would be able to sell only jibba burgers, but now he is suffering losses and something needs to be done about it. However, he can't say a now in front of Ifei. The vegetable man smiled at him and said that then he would show him the things that go well with Gibba, and asked what he thought of his offer. The man thought that his daughter was looking at him, so he was beaming with joy and waiting for her attention, but she had her back turned to him. At that time, Asuta thanked him for the offer. The vegetable man said that then he would go and get it, after which he called out to his daughter and said that they would go home now. To which Tara agreed and, turning to the heroes, smiled and said goodbye to them. Asuta thought that the man looked sad. After a while, the man returned and brought some vegetables from home. The main character and Vina bent over them. The girl said that she sees a lot of vegetables here for the first time. Asuta asked him if he could taste them, to which the vegetable man replied that they were not for sale, so they could safely try. And then he remembered that he wanted to warn the main character, but did not have time. He started talking about the fact that there are vegetables with a very strong taste here, and Asuta at that time just decided to try this particular vegetable. The main character had tears in his eyes. He said that this thing, which looked like a small turnip, burned through his nose with its smell and special taste, and said that he did not understand anything, but he saw that he had guessed right. The vegetable man looked at the remaining vegetables and said that it meant Niyama after all. Vina turned to Asuta and told him that he had a good sense. The man explained that Niyama has this very strong smell. It does not need to be eaten alive, and then asked if he would try other vegetables. Asuta sat down on his knees. Tears were still in his eyes, and he was only thinking about the strong smell of the vegetable. The man said that he could already spit it out. The main character refused, after which she swallowed it completely and said that he could do something about it. Asuta turned to the vegetable man and said he wanted to talk about Miyama. The latter agreed and asked him if his vegetables were foshji, and immediately asked about how much to sell to him. To which the main character showed him and said that this is how much you need. Then the man told him to pay him the specified amount. The happy vegetable man turned around and said that he would go and get some vegetables now and asked to wait for him. Asuta could only think that the deal was done. After looking at the bags of other products, the main character thought about what to do with them. At this time, Ifa said that this man was some kind of craftsman. Asuta looked at her in disbelief. He thought about the fact that he is a cook, and with the help of a hint from a vegetable expert, he will create a new menu. He looked determined. Vina came up to him and excitedly asked him what he was doing, to which he said that he was thinking about a new menu. Realizing what he said, the girl seriously asked him if he really wanted to come up with a new menu. He got nervous and said that it was true. She smiled and was embarrassed, after which she said that it was very curious, and asked if she could help him. They looked into the box where the jug was. Asuta smiled and said that now we need to collect the groceries. Vina was standing next to him, smiling too. He took out a jug and said that it was still a meat dish, which meant that the bad smell should be removed with wine. Vina then asked him about how he was going to season, to which he said he needed to think about it and see what they had. He found salt for taro sauce and pico leaves. Asuta thought that you can only fry chicken with this. Then he thought that he needed to come up with something to sell meat by itself. He was so lost in his thoughts that Ryouridou had to lean over to him and call his name. She asked him why he was slicing meat so thinly, to which the main character explained that it would be easy to eat it thinly, and pico with salt would quickly taste good. Then he was hailed. Asuta turned around and saw that it was the vegetable man who had returned. That's how he addressed him, to which the man said that he had a name, Dora. He put the vegetables in front of him and said that he had brought Miyama. The main character thanked him for this. The latter immediately began to slice it. At the same time, he asked Rua for wine to light the stove. Asuta was coming up with a recipe. He put a frying pan on the fire, lightly poured wine and added chopped Miyama, and then poured wine again when it was fried. The vegetable man stood and smiled, looking at his cooking. Ryouridou said that it smells delicious. Then he added the thinly sliced meat. At this moment, the girl and the man, feeling the aroma, strained a little from the way he teases the appetite, because the smell of fried meat is overlaid with the pungent smell of miyamu, and all this fragrance is flying around the city together. Ryouridou thought about what he wanted to eat. Ifa said that she did not know that such a thing was possible with a shop. Asuta turned to Vina and asked her to cook fried poiton and tino. She said she would do everything, and then asked him if there was enough, to which he agreed. He thought that with poiton and tino, the dish could be carried with him. He put the finished meat on top of the poiton and lightly poured gravy over it. Vina smiled at him and asked that the meat was ready now, to which he turned to her and said that it was ready. He rolled the resulting dish into a roll and said that he hoped that the ingredients would not fall out, and the mayamshik with chicken was ready. Ryouridou and Dora bent over the dish, and, looking at it, the girl said that it looked delicious, and the vegetable man said that it was nice. As Miyamu's supplier, he should buy it first. To which Asuta stopped him and told him to wait, since this is a trial version, and he is not sure that he is ready to sell it. To which the man said that he had money and he wanted to eat. The main character thought that he was honest with his desires. Then he rolled up a dish for him and told him what he could buy. The vegetable man said that, therefore, cost 2 coppers, handed him the money, and, turning away, immediately bit into the food. After he felt the taste, he said that the bitterness of miyamu, the feeling of chewing jiba and salinity were what he needed. But he did not have time to finish, because he felt someone else's presence near him. He turned around and saw the merchants who were looking at him intently. Asuta, seeing them, thought that the simians had come. The main character asked them if they would order a jib burger again, to which the blonde man said they wanted thinly sliced meat. After that, he held up one finger and said that he wanted 1 mayamshik. Asuta was surprised and said that he would be charged 2 coppers. He thought to himself that there was no turning back. He immediately shouted to Ryouridou to cook another one. At this time, the Chinese were closely watching the cooking process. The vegetable man, after looking at these men, decided to quickly say goodbye and leave. He said that he ran. He would come in a little later to buy Tara too. Asuta, looking at him, thought that he had escaped. The main character cooked a miumchik, handed it to them, taking 2 coppers for himself. The Chinese took turns trying this dish. After a while, they got bored again, and Asuta thought that they were discussing something again, and he wondered what they would say today. The blonde man asked the main character for 6 more miumchiki and 6 G burgers. The latter was shocked and began to think that if you add Dora's purchases to this, then you will be a plus today. Asuta resolutely said that he understood them and asked them to wait a little. It will be ready soon. After that, he turned to Ryouridou, and she immediately understood what was required of her. I Fa, looking at what was happening in front of her, smiled very gently. Ryouridou, also looking at this picture, thought about why he was not given a try. After a while, Asuta prepared the order completely and put all the dishes on the table. He apologized to the simians for waiting and said that the jiba burgers and miumchiki were ready. The men picked up their order and, starting to eat right on the way, walked away. The main character exhaled and thought that, thank God, the chicken was sold out. He turned to Ryouridou and said that Tara still needed to cook, to which she replied that she understood him. Then Asuta wondered if the vegetable man would come back at all. Then Ryouridou said that he could go and ask. Ifa would stay instead, and he would go and find out everything. He staggered up and said that it was simply unbearable to hear the smell and sit on guard. Asuta apologized to him. Then the guy said he would go, but the main character called him by name. Ryouridou asked about what happened. The guy turned back to the road and was about to leave. But then Asuta shouted to him that he would make a jiba burger for his arrival. Ryouridou immediately smiled happily. His cheeks turned red, and he said it would be good. The main character also smiled at him and thought that he was glad. Asuta said that it would be necessary to do more jiba burge. Ifa apologized to him. He looked at her and said that it was not worth apologizing, because they were helping him. He smiled and said that they had managed to sell the chicken. Without them, he would not have been able to do it. The main character is so grateful to both the Parisians and the Genoese. Ryouridou lowered her eyes and smiled, saying that she was also very grateful to him. He was surprised by her words, but she changed the subject and said she was going to cut up Tino. At this time, Ryouridou went in search of a vegetable garden. As he walked down the street, Asuta's words came after him about what should be prepared for his return. Passing by one of the turns, he saw a small group of people. There were several men and a girl with long, dark hair standing there. One of the men said it was that shop. Another confirmed his words. Ryouridou thought about why they were looking out at Asuta's shop, and who they were anyway. Ryouridou heard the brunette say that it was that shop after all. One of the men suggested that they go there. They came around the bend and headed towards the store. He turned around and decided that he would have to follow them. At this time, Asuta said that the burgers were ready. It was necessary to make miamshikov. Ryouridou, seeing that people were approaching them, asked if customers had come to them. The brunette was standing not far from the shop and looked at them very maliciously. Looking at her, the girl turned away and thought about what her gaze already felt on them. Ryouridou has already arrived at the place. He thought about how he knew and did those people want to harm their shop. He was already preparing to draw his weapon. The brunette got angry and said about what it was. She heard a pleasant smell and came, and here there was a stall near the trees. A man standing next to me asked if everything was really wrong with Gibiatina. They were both upset. Ryouridou smiled awkwardly at them. Asuta looked at them very seriously. And Ryouridou offered to go to the vegetable garden. A dark-haired man with short hair said that they had been trudging all the way to the end of the street. The second man with longer hair told the girl, calling her Yumi, that you can't rely on her instincts. Asuta watched their bickering in silence. The men started telling Yumi that this was her responsibility, and she had to take it on herself. She was indignant and asked in what sense it was. They pushed her towards the shop. The man with short hair told her to try their food. The girl asked if she really needed to eat chicken, what kind of ridicule it was, to which the other man said that she wanted to come here herself. Asuta, looking at them, thought about why they called it ridicule, and he, of course, knew that the Genoese did not have a very good opinion of the Parisians. He did not think about it, but immediately turned to Yumi and said that he was thinking that she should try their food first before unreasonably complaining about it. The girl was shocked by what he said to her. Her friends told her that even Asuta agreed with them. The latter thought that he knew that he was doing wrong, but he didn't open the shop to mock people. He turned back to the girl and asked what she had decided. The strangers stood and stared intently at the meat sizzling in the pan. One of them swallowed hard from the aroma. Yumi told him to give her one piece of what he was cooking. Asuta smiled and told her to have a taste of the chicken mianjik, to which the girl made a face as if the very thought of it was unpleasant to her. The man with short hair told her to prepare for the ordeal. She didn't answer anything, just watched as the main character fried thinly sliced meat. He handed her one piece of chicken and said that it would be 2 coppers. She handed him a coin and thought to herself that she had to spend money on such a bad dish. The main character looked at her carefully and thought that since she came to a delicious smell, if she tried it, she would surely like it. Asuta saw her bite into the dish. He thought that it was great. Now she would try the dish. Her friends began to ask her opinion. Yumi swallowed a piece and abruptly turned around to leave. The men immediately called out to her as they did not understand what was going on. They asked her what had happened, to which she replied that it was nothing, and suggested that they leave as soon as possible, and also added that she was full, and asked them if she would finish eating. The main character looked at her in shock, as he did not expect this. Yumi's friends laughed and said they would never eat it. One of them noticed that the girl was angry. Neither Asuta nor Vina had anything to say to that. The latter looked at him and called his name. He was standing very sad, as if a black aura was hovering around him. Ifa also looked at his back with a question in her eyes. Suddenly, Vina said that Ryouridou and Dora had returned. Asuta, being in his thoughts, at first did not understand what she said, and asked again. Satisfied men came up to the shop. Ryouridou smiled and said that they had come. The vegetable man waved at them and, smiling, asked if mianjik was ready for Terra. Asuta smiled tightly and said that mianjik was ready, while he said the name of the dish with some pause. Dora thanked him, and then looked at him questioningly. The main character, holding out the dish, asked about what happened. The vegetable man took it in his hands and said in a serious tone that he now seemed to pronounce the word mianjik with difficulty. Asuta didn't expect it to be so noticeable. He lowered his eyes and at first did not know how to express himself. But then he said that he understood what was the matter. He was just thinking a little. Asuta grinned and said that he was thinking about how to cook it better. Ifa looked at him with concern in her eyes, as she understood what he was going through. The vegetable man looked at him in surprise and asked if he was really going to improve the mianjik, and he added that he thinks that he is so good. Asuta thanked him, but he said that they still have mayam left, and they are still closing for today. Then someone from the outside asked what he was talking about. It turned out to be Kamweishu, who was clearly running towards them quickly, as his face turned red and sweat broke out on his face. He asked Asuta to wait. The main character turned his head to the man's voice and reacted rather dejectedly to his arrival. The defender asked him if he had time to buy, to which Asuta categorically informed that they were closed. But Kamwei did not agree with him and exclaimed that he was in time. Dora, seeing who came up to the shop, greeted the man. The defender also greeted him in response and said that it seemed to him that he was in time. He wanted to repeat it again, but suddenly stopped. He happily talked about how Min felt and asked Asuta what he had thought of new things. The latter confirmed that he had come up with a new dish, but explained that they were already cleaning up. Kamua's face became both shocked and sad. The vegetable man came up to him and, holding out the bag, said that if he wanted, then let him take it, but explained that he bought it for his daughter. The defender looked questioningly at the new dish and affirmatively said that Asuta did not use chicken in this new dish. Kamwa turned around to leave and said that then he would come and buy tomorrow and punished Doom so that everything would not be sorted out. He turned around and asked him to leave one for him, to which the main character asked him if he was going to eat alone. The defender said that he would not eat alone. An image of Wraith appeared before his eyes, and he said that he looked so gentle, did not get along well with unusual food, which needed to be tasted several times to understand its charm, even if the flavor was nailed by Miam. Asuta, looking after him, said that he understood. Vinaru turned to him and asked about what had happened. He also turned in her direction and said that nothing had happened and that they should continue to clean up. She agreed with him. Dora said that he would then go to his daughter. Everyone said goodbye to each other until tomorrow. On the way home, Asuta smiled and thanked Ifu, Wine and Ryouridou for today. to which the latter said that there was nothing to thank for. The girl asked why the head of the Fa was so sleepy. Ifa was surprised by the question. She explained that she was tired and apologized to everyone. But she thought to herself that she couldn't say that she couldn't sleep properly because of the delicious smell. To which the girl replied that the main thing was that she was healthy. She turned around to look at him and thought that Asuta was cooking something in the evening. I wonder how they will have the auction today. They reopened the shop the next day. The main character put the pan on the fire and said that they were opening. Ruao's guild smiled at his words. Next, Asuta put some kind of box on the table. Ifa and Ryouridou looked at this with incomprehension in their eyes. The latter asked the girl what it was, because it was the first time he had seen this box. Ifa tried to answer, but then she was interrupted by the main character, who triumphantly opened the box and said that it was chicken soaked in miam sauce. Ryouridou asked again about the miam sauce, and the girl confirmed that it was so. The head of the Fa tried to talk about what Asuta was doing yesterday. But then Dora the vegetable man came to them and asked them if they had already opened. The main character turned around at his voice, smiled, and said that he saw that he had brought his vegetables. The vegetable man said that he was already their master, so he personally delivered them, to which Asuta thanked him from the bottom of his heart. Dora also said that Tara was with him today. She said she was interested in seeing how Miyama was cooked. His daughter stood next to the man and looked at them in embarrassment. The vegetable man said that apparently she really liked yesterday's miyamchik. Asuta said he was very flattered. Dora said that it was his daughter. Yumi was walking towards the tent again. Looking at all this, she thought about what was going on with them. Looking at Dora and Tara, she thought that the savages from Giva were cooking right there, and that these Genoese could like it so much. The main character saw that Yumi had come again. He met her gaze and smiled. The latter jerked in shock and thought that she was being provoked, after which she furiously strode towards the shop. She squeezed in between Dora and Tara and turned to Asuta. She asked him that he was selling his fruit again, to which he replied that he was very glad that she had come. Yumi immediately began to get angry at his words. She immediately questioned him about what he had said at all. And then she was called out. She looked down and saw that it was a little girl who had called her. Tara said that this food was not nonsense and asked her to look at it. Yumi looked at her, then closed her eyes, folded her arms and said that she understood everything and was ready to keep the girl company. Asuta looked at her attentively, but the brunette pretended not to notice this and therefore did not look at him in response. Then he turned to them and told them to look at him. The main character poured the wine into a frying pan, then put the chicken already soaked in sauce there. It all started to sizzle. Tara, looking at the meat, said that yesterday there were tiny pieces of miam in the miam cheek, and there are none here, but the pan smells of fried miam. Yumi looked at it with surprise, thinking that this was really the case, but the smell was the same as yesterday. She wondered how this was possible. Asuta replied to the girl that he had mixed chopped miam with wine sauce yesterday, and then soaked the meat in it all night. He picked up the box and showed them the pickled pieces. Tara smiled at his words and said that since he put it on overnight, that's why it smells so delicious. Yumi crossed her arms over her chest and did not respond to this. He continued the story about the cooking process. He said that now they added the sauce in which they cooked, put it all out, due to which the taste is absorbed, and now the meat is ready. The girl looked at it enthusiastically and smiled broadly. Dora immediately came up to the shop again and said that he had found a good use for his miyama, after which he turned to his daughter and asked if she would be his, to which she happily agreed with him. Yumi, watching them, was surprised. Asuta resolutely turned to her and asked if she would like to taste his dish one more time. She immediately exclaimed, asking why she was the one, to which he said that he was not trying to sell her food, he just wanted her to try it. Yumi thought confusedly about what the main character was thinking about when he shoved fruit at her here. She thought that in any case, everything would be like yesterday, so she stretched out her hand and told him to give her a miyamjik. He said that he understood her and picked up the cooked food. He handed her the dish. She took it resolutely, then immediately bit it. Yumi stood and chewed without looking up at him. Asuta, looking at her, thought only of her continuing to eat it. He looked at her expectantly, from which she even looked away, and then she bit again. The main character was very happy about this fact. He thought about what she was eating and thought about the reason why she hadn't eaten yesterday. Yumi ate it completely. She waved her hand, closed her eyes, and said that she was done. Asuta immediately asked her opinion about the dish. She crossed her arms over her chest again and looked away, after which she said that it was okay to eat it. Her face showed no emotion. She said that for this reason she would pay him and put 2 coppers on the counter. But he refused and said that he just asked her to try and pushed the coins back to her. Her cheeks immediately turned red. She began to talk emotionally about how she wanted to apologize in this way for saying that he was disturbing everyone with his nonsense. Looking at her, he thought that, in his opinion, she was kind of saying that he was mocking people. Yumi quickly said that was the reason she paid, after which he said goodbye and quickly ran away. Asuta closed his eyes and bowed to her, after which he also thanked her. But the girl had already left and never looked back at him. He smiled and thought that this was his first customer from this city who was not his acquaintance. Vina, noticing his smile, asked about what it was about, to which he vaguely replied that it was nothing. She said that it was still interesting that Yumi managed to master the meat in one day, which she could not stand yesterday. Tara answered her and said that the reason was that the meat had become even tastier. Ryouridou was surprised by her words and gasped. The girl said that the chicken is much stronger in taste. It is soaked compared to yesterday. She even wants to try to eat only the meat inside. Her father immediately leaned over to her and said with a smile that Tara had said yesterday that his Tino was also good. The girl giggled at his words. Asuta thought that after all, people in the city have their own special preferences. Then Kamui called out to him by name. He said that he had come to do some shopping. The main character looked at him indifferently. When the latter approached the shop, he bowed to him and thanked him for yesterday. Kamui was surprised and asked what he was talking about. Asuta smiled broadly at him and said that he wasn't talking about anything. The main character thought that before that he had only been praised. They always talked about impressions about food, although 100% cannot rely on these impressions. At this time, Dora told Kamui that Asuta had done even better today. The latter kept thinking that this was the first time he had his own shop. Different people were helping him. Different people were eating his food. Somehow it all started to spin. And now he's wondering if it's a dream. Then Ryouridou said that the Chinese had arrived. At this time, Kamui paid him for the meal. The vegetable man and his daughter said they would go home then. Kamui went with them and said that he had bought a lot today. It was time to go to work. Asuta smiled at the simians who came up and asked what they wanted, to which they replied that they had come to talk today. The main character was surprised. Listening to one of the singers, he visibly tensed up and began to get nervous. Ifa looked at them and thought about what was going on there. It didn't look like usual. After the conversation, the men left, and Asuta headed towards the head of the Fa. She called out his name. He came up to her and said he needed to talk to her.